Okay then, if we can get started, please. Item 1 on the agenda, announcements by the Mayor and Chief Executive. We've got one announcement that some of the items on the agenda are now withdrawn for this meeting. So motions 14, 15, 16, 17, 22, 23 and 24. Those items, you know, there's always one. Yeah, there's always one. There's always one. So items 14, 15, 16, 17, 22, 23, 24 and 25 are withdrawn from tonight's agenda. All right, okay. Chief Executive, do you have anything to... apologies for absence then. Councillor Sokol.
Madam Mayor, apology from Councillor Nausheen Dad and Councillor Harry McCarthy. Thank you.
Councillor Richard Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With apologies from Councillor Lisa Holmes, Tim Bamford, Damien Brooke and Tony McGrath. And I remembered them.
Thank you. Councillor Munro.
I'd like to apologise for Councillor... I think you pressed the button and I pressed... Let's go again.
Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to give apologies for Councillor Kath Pinnock and Councillor Ashley Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allison.
Thank you. I'd like to give apologies for Councillor Suley Richards.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to let you know that Councillor Zaman and Councillor Masood Ahmed will be arriving later.
I'd like to give an apology for Aziz Darji.
Thank you. Thanks. Are there any other apologies for absence? Councillor Joe Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The apologies from Councillor Ali Arshad. He will be coming late.
Thank you. Okay then, so minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the meeting of Council held on 12th of November 2025 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded? Thank you. Can we vote by a show of hands on the minutes, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Was that an against or a for? A for, okay. And any abstentions? Okay, all right, that was a pass, thank you. Do any members have any declarations of pecuniary interests that they need to declare, please? No? Nobody? If there are any interests that come up during the meeting, can I remind members that they need to be verbally declared in the meeting, so if you can declare them if they arise during the meeting, please, and then make a declaration with the form that's been provided. Thank you. Do we have, item 5, do we have any petitions from members of the council? No? Okay, thank you. Item 6, deputations and petitions. We've no deputations this evening? No? No. No deputations this evening. Any public petitions? Okay, thank you. So we move then to item 7, public questions. 15 minutes is permitted for this item. 6 public questions have been received and responses published. Supplementary questions will be permitted. So, Tracy, can I ask you to come through, please? If you can say who you are and put your supplementary, please. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Tracy. Actually, you've got me down wrong here. It's Tracy Weaver, not Tracy Whiteman. So my supplemental would be, in answer to the first one, if the council doesn't independently verify the data or the conclusions in a developer's risk assessment, then surely doesn't that mean that the outcome of the planning decision is effectively being determined by the developer's consultant, a bit like marking your own homework?
Councillor Turner to respond, please.
All the assessments are reviewed, as pointed out in the first question, by the relevant officers. Some of those assessments are also reviewed by external bodies, such as the Environment Agency. As long as those meet their requirements, they will go through normal planning application and subject to, in some cases, conditions which will have to be discharged during the process.
Okay. Do you have a supplementary to question 2?
I do. Question 2. I read your response with interest. Thank you. And it is clear that the council does recognise its duties and regulations. My question is, if the council accepts these duties and understands regulatory processes, why was the EIA screening opinion withheld from the public planning portal in contravention of particular acts? Town and country planning.
Councillor Amanda Pinnock to respond, please.
Unfortunately, I can't respond to that. It's a technical question. I'd need to get some advice from the officers who are involved. So I can write to you with a response to that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we ask Sharon to come forward, please?
Hello.
Do you have a supplementary to question 3?
I do, yes. Quite a simple question, really. Why does the council provide a record of previously used consultants if it is not an official approved list?
Councillor Pinnock to respond. Sorry. Councillor Turner to respond.
Thank you, Sharon, for that question. The reason we hold a record is because some developers are relatively small, single homes or type building. So it's provided to aid them in their process of going through the planning permission process. So it's an aid for those. This is not a recommendation. It is simply a list for small SME builders that they can access to help them get the planning process.
Okay. Is supplementary to question 4?
Yep. If the council never formally rejects a contamination report, even when key receptors are missing, how can residents have confidence the assessment is genuinely being scrutinised?
Councillor Turner.
That's a rather technical answer. I'll get back to you because I'll speak to the officers about whether we do or don't reject them.
Thank you. Is Owen available, please? Can you come forward? Do you have a supplementary to question 5, please? Thank you.
Hello. My question is there a standard process or minimum information standard that officers must follow when responding to residents' environmental health concerns, or does this vary case by case?
Councillor Turner.
I'm not sure what the legal requirement is about how this would respond, but I will check with officers and get back to you, because obviously that's a technical requirement, technical answer required on that one.
Supplementary to question 6.
I was in this chamber a month ago, and the reason I asked this question is because it took me just about a month to receive a written response from my last question. So my question is, can the leader confirm, or can the council confirm, whether the council will commit to a defined time frame, for example 10 or 20 working days, for providing written follow-up responses where an answer cannot be given in the chamber.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. I mean, I think the answer to that question is the same, more or less, as the question that the answer to your original written question. It depends what the question is. It depends on various circumstances in terms of being able to answer that question. In the occasion, this particular question that you asked last month, the reason why you didn't receive an answer until very recently was because the person that needed to respond to that was first off ill and then off on holiday. So they only returned to work in the last few days, and they have dealt with that as quickly as possible. I'm sorry that you've had to wait for that, but there's always a good reason why if you do. So we can't really commit to any particular time frame, I'm sorry.
I was told it was an internet issue.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Okay, item 8. Presume that's St Andrew, is it? Yeah. Item 8, West Yorkshire Combined Authority minutes. To receive for information the minutes of West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The minutes are here for noting. Are there any comments or questions regarding the minutes, please? Councillor John Lawson.
On page 25 on our digital pack, it refers to the A638 Sustainable Travel Corridor. And we note that there's an extra 1.7 million that was allocated to the project. Now, I don't know what the new bus lane in Oakenshaw is costing, but I know that an estimated full 1 minute will be served on the journey. We seem to be spending a eye-watering amount of money in burying part of a green wildlife corridor to save for not much added time value to the sustainable travel. Do you have any comments on that, and how is it justified?
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. I mean, this is the same answer to any of these particular road schemes where we're trying to increase journey times or giving opportunities for buses to be able to make a better journey and or cycles, etc. as well. I mean, basically, it isn't just the 1 minute of a particular journey. It's the cumulative effect of that 1 minute. But it's also about air quality, and it's also about trying to improve active travel and getting people onto buses and off the roads as well. So it can always, WICA will always try to have or add to any road scheme that sort of element if at all possible, and it can always be proved that it is a worthwhile expenditure.
Okay. Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was interested on the same subject that the leader started her answer with. The aim is to increase journey times. One would have thought these schemes were to decrease them. Yes, I think if you played the recording back, it did say increase. However, moving on as well, the leader also talked about making active travel improvements. From someone who has some experience of active travel, both as a cabinet member and having worked in the industry, what I'm seeing so far with many schemes is they're not improvements, they're detrimental. This scheme, Madam Mayor, as I'm sure many will know, driving around the Spen Valley, you have a segregated cycle lane on one side of the road. I did ask at a previous meeting what plans were being made for regular and winter maintenance for that. Like the members of the public, I'm still waiting for a reply on that. It's a key issue because to improve active travel, you've got to maintain the network. And, as we see now, as we move into winter, if these segregated lanes are not de-iced, note I say not, I didn't mention grit, because you can't put rock salt down on a cycle lane. If they're not de-iced, then they become dangerous for users. Similarly, segregated cycle lanes, as the West Yorkshire Transport Authority found, if you don't have a sweeping mechanism in place and they get glass on, then, again, they're detrimental. Same as we've seen, Madam Mayor, with the Lockwood junction, where people were consulted on a scheme which included a bypass for cyclists past a no-entry sign, but then this was withdrawn. No consultation, and it was put through as a traffic order which diverts cyclists back onto the main road into Huddersfield and bottom of Chapel Hill. So active travel improvements. Again, I would ask what input the network known as the Kirklees Active Travel Partnership. I've seen some information about this, and there's about 15 officers attend a meeting. So there's quite a bit of money floating around at the meeting, but I've never seen any input to any schemes from this group. And as I say, if they cycled around Lockwood like I do, 3 or 4 times a week, you would find that it's a detrimental situation. It's also been said that it's going to improve things. When I'm going to Home Firth on an active travel scheme, a sustainable transport corridor, you found that the transport is backing up nearly to the viaduct on Woodhead Road. That's worse than it was before. So what we're seeing here, again, on the A638, is the path on the north side for the benefit of the Cabinet members, none of whom I think live in North Kirklees, so I'll give them a geographical answer. The cycle lane is on the north side of the road. The main receptors for journeys, the old Spembra Baths, the industry, the Princess Mary playing fields, etc., are all on the south side. So you're finding people that are going to have to cross the A638, which has just been narrowed down and therefore made more difficult to cross without any active travel measures there. So I would ask what considerations are given about consulting the people who actually use active travel, the cycling clubs, the Kirklees cycle groups, because I noticed Kirklees was praised some years ago for having a public cycle forum, but that has been terminated, so you don't actually engage with cyclists other than putting notices up on lampposts. There's no real engagement, as I'm finding out. And Councillor Hawkins will recall I mentioned an active travel scheme to him and his colleagues, linking the Calder Valley Greenway to Leeds Road some time ago. That's 1.3 million of sustainable travel money. But the key links from the Greenway to the towpath and from the towpath to Ashgrove Road are not done. They're just rutted dirt tracks. And I'm told by officers they're not done because linking the towpath to the Greenway across a bridge on the canal, owned by the Canal and Rivers Trust, is not in the extent of the survey. And similarly, linking that towpath, an active travel route, a sustainable travel corridor, to Ashgrove Road is not in the extent. How do people get onto these routes if you don't make the links? That, Madam Mayor, is surely, in those cases, spoiling the ship for a ha'porth of tar because you're leaving those routes where people are riding on muck tracks. I agree, unfortunately, as a cyclist, I agree with many people when they say this is wasted council money. You're not delivering for cyclists and you're not delivering for the motorists. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I think that was possibly an A, B, C and D of a question. Councillor Patterson.
I will just say that I'm sorry about the slip of the tongue there in terms of increase or decrease, but I'm going to pass that question to Moses Crook. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Martin, for your lengthy contribution. As always, it's nice to have a run-through of all of the travel schemes that are active and planned across the whole of the borough. I do appreciate your position, and I realise that some of the historic schemes haven't always been delivered with the full active travel component as originally planned. And I would just point you towards, firstly, our active travel interim position statement and also a transport strategy, which are meaningful steps towards ensuring that those essential active travel elements of schemes are delivered going forward. I can't answer to the past, but I can say that that's a commitment that we've made in the transport team going forwards. There's work going on the LSWIPS programme, as you're aware, so that we've got a basis for developing schemes specifically for active travel across the borough with a long-term aspiration to joining them together. In terms of the active travel partnership, I really value those meetings and I think I've attended all of them while I've been transport portfolio holder. It's an opportunity for me to hear feedback from those special interest groups like cycle groups and cycle Kirklees and so on. And I do feed that back into portfolio briefings. I do recognise the important input they can have into how we design active travel schemes. And we have had a lot of success with delivery of active travel schemes. I think the resurfacing of the canal towpath into Slough has been extremely well received. And also the funding that we recently won for the next stage of the Melton Netherton Greenway has been extremely well received. And I went and walked the Greenway recently myself, and it's a really good asset for the community. So we are really trying. The Lockwood scheme, you referenced some traffic tailbacks. I mean, that's my commute into the office. Quite often I'm commuting at 6:30 in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, so the traffic's not too bad. But on the times when I have been travelling in rush hour, I am held up there. That scheme isn't finished yet, so let's hold back judgment and trust that the design of the professional officers put it together will be effective once it's fully completed. But I do take your point about changes to the specific elements of that scheme that were around active travel and cycling, and refer you to the earlier part of my answer. So in terms of the winter maintenance specific for cycle paths, my colleague Councillor Hawkins has agreed that he will refer to that in his presentation when we get to holding the executive to account. So it is something we're aware of and looking at, and I understand there's some complexity because you can't just spread rock salt on the cycle paths and so on. So work in progress on that. Of course, when I had time to cycle, I tended to avoid going out when it was icy because it's pretty dangerous on two wheels when it's icy. So I do accept that that's an important point. But thank you for your contribution.
Thank you. Councillor Kath Pinnock.
Sorry, it's me.
Oh, you're in the wrong seat, Councillor Pinnock. Oh,
I do apologise, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Yes. Following on from what Councillor Lawson said, this is a different part of the A638 where there is a cycle path which is right next to some old people's bungalows, some of whom have got limited mobility and now have a double yellow lines outside their house and their houses. And I personally think this is setting one group of people off against another. In other words, cyclists as against older people. It just doesn't seem fair. I haven't had a fair answer to this question since we raised it at one of the public hearings in relation to this. And I don't know what the people in these houses are supposed to do because some of them can't walk the distance to the car park that they have got. So many times have I heard people who live down there saying hardly anybody rides a cycle on this part of the A638. This is their own observations, incidentally, not mine. I don't know whether it's true of other parts of the A638, but it just seems so unfair.
Councillor Patterson.
Out the Sorry, I think we've heard a lot about the A638 last meeting, as well as, if not even the meeting before, if I remember correctly. So I'm not really sure if we're going to be able to, we won't be duplicating an answer to this, but I will ask Councillor Crook again to answer. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Crook.
Thanks very much for bringing this up. What I would say is, please can you email me with details about this? I'm not actually specifically aware of the case that you're talking about. And you referenced double yellow lines and then saying there was a conflict between cyclists and the occupiers of the bungalows. I assume you mean the double yellow lines, or that TRO is there to ensure that the cycle lane stays clear or whatever. No, that's fine. I'm just picking up the detail because obviously not being aware of that actual specific instance. If you send me an email, I can follow that up with officers. But I do think that anecdotal evidence that no one cycles along there isn't necessarily the full picture, and I'm sure that the officers will have done surveys and projections and so on before allocating funding for a scheme of that nature. And it is also important within that to understand that we need to make a strategic case for change of mode of travel, for modal shift, because we've got obligations to, with respect to the climate emergency and so on, which mean that we do have to facilitate better public transport, better active travel. And in some cases that leads to situations where people say there's no need for a bus lane or there's no need for a cycle path. right now, but that doesn't mean there isn't, as we go forward with the broader and longer term strategic thinking that exists across the whole of the West Yorkshire district. So it's more complex than just the experience of someone looking out of their window today, but I will get back to you with specific detail on the rationale for that scheme if you email me the details. Thank you.
Councillor Pinnock, before I forget, when we get to voting on the consoles, yeah. Yeah. Right, okay. Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. It'll come up if you're not on, use your own console. It'll councillor. Yeah. Okay. All right, okay. Councillor Bellamy.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. The minutes refer to ongoing regional rail discussions. So can the leader give us an update on when the promised increased Penistone line services will be delivered and if Home Valley residents will actually benefit?
Councillor Pattison, or is it going to be...
I'm going to pass to Councillor Crook, yes.
Councillor Crook, okay.
Thanks, Donna, for your question about the Penistone line. I always enjoy bringing up the Penistone line. It's a fantastic win for Kirklees Council. After some decades of lobbying and activity, we've managed to win £48 million. The last government, as you know, assigned that money without actually being any money in the background, but we were able to sustain the award through good lobbying, including with our local MP, Paul Davis, and others. And that money is confirmed. We've had drawdown of that money to do the outline business case, which will be completed by March 2026. We'll then move on to the full business case immediately and move to delivery as soon as humanly possible. But it is a case of doing the right process in the right order. In terms of the when passengers will see advantage, that will be still some years down the line, because you'll appreciate it will be towards the end of 2026 before the full business case is completed, and then we'll move to procurement and so on. And actually heavy rail projects do take some time to deliver as well. So as soon as possible, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to add my comments also to those that have been made from members opposite and from Councillor Bolt about the A638. I apologise to members that aren't local to the A638, because you probably sat there thinking, we should stop banging on about the A638. But it's an important issue for us, actually. And those that don't know the area, just to explain to you, the A638, or the stretch that we're talking about, runs between Hetman Wyke and Cleckheaton and beyond. And running parallel to it on one side is the Spen Valley Greenway, which runs all the way from Dewsbury through Oakenshaw, which is a fantastic facility, particularly for people that want to walk and want to cycle and ride the horses. Absolutely brilliant. It's well used and it runs parallel to that road. So there is already space available for people to cycle safely. On the other side of the A638, running parallel to it, is the Spen Valley Ringway, which also is a great facility for people that want to cycle. So we're actually really well off for cycling facilities in the Spen Valley. You know, I do praise the fact that they are there and they are very well used. And that's why members are so cross that all this work is going on, putting in a cycle lane down the middle of the valley on the road. Because the safest place to be is either on the Ringway or on the Greenway and not down that stretch of the road. The other thing, of course, is that in order to make way for the cycle lanes that have been put there, it's necessitated changes to most of the junctions that run down the bottom of the valley. And this is what costs the money. You know, putting a bit of tarmac in and a white line doesn't cost money, but all these changes to the junctions is an inordinate amount of money. We've already seen there that the cost is going up by another, however much it is, 1.7 million. So I'm only saying this really because I think that the leader of the council needs to understand where local members are coming from, so that when this comes up at the local authority, she knows that I think cross-party we're all rather unhappy that such a lot of money is being spent and people are losing their parking and people are losing their safe access to the schools and all this kind of thing. So if she would take note of that, we would be grateful.
Councillor Crook.
Thanks very much. Who knew there was so much to ask on the West Yorkshire Combined Authority minutes? So the Spen Valley Greenway is a fantastic active travel asset, and I think a good response to Martin Bolt's question about when we were going to see some good active travel assets in Kirklees. I think connecting these fantastic pieces of asset together is where we start to get a network, and then we can start to see people engaging in use of active travel modes instead of car, which is really the holy grail of active travel provision from my perspective. In terms of the technical justification for the areas of cycle lane on the 638, I'm happy to get back to you with detail on that, but obviously that's a calculated part of the justification for the scheme, and so if you give me an email, I will get back to you. In terms of the change request for £1.7 million on the overall scheme, which has various elements, including the sections on the 638 and so on, the original indicative costs, as I understand it, were indicative costs, and the scheme has obviously developed as they've got into more of the detail, and obviously also we had COVID in the middle of that, which has changed the cost profile of delivering that sort of civil scheme. So that was the reason, and it was supported by West Yorkshire officers and by the combined authority. So I think in terms of the additional spend, that's been well justified and gone through their framework to make sure it's still good value for money. So I'm comfortable that it's good value for money, and in terms of the, as I say, the technical justification, happy to get back to you with that detail.
Thank you. Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm grateful to Councillor Crook for highlighting the importance of linking greenways. So could I therefore ask him when we're going to see some progress on linking the ringway, which Councillor Hall has just mentioned, but for some years has been stymied by a short section which is in private ownership. There is a lot of it that's owned by Sustrans, but some of it is in private ownership. To refresh colleagues' memory, this project in March 2021, at a cabinet meeting when several of the cabinet members were still members of the cabinet, there have been some changes, there was £1.5 million gifted to Heckmondwike, and one of the things that it could be used for was active and sustainable transport. And in that meeting, Madam Mayor, I asked if the ringway could be prioritised. The answer I got back when the leader at the time delegated it to Councillor Steve Hall was, "They can sleep soundly in their bed, we're on with it. Don't thee worry about Heckmondwike, we're on with it." Well, Madam Mayor, people in Heckmondwike and beyond cannot sleep soundly in their bed. 4 years later, nothing has happened. I don't know where the £1.5 million dedicated to Heckmondwike and sustainable transport has gone, but it certainly hasn't gone into making these links, which the Deputy Leader agrees with me, are so vital. Neither, Madam Mayor, have we seen any progress in creating a missing link in Murfield, which was identified in 2018 by Sustrans in a national programme called Paths for Everyone as being a strategic national gap linking the Calder Valley Greenway from Church Lane at Murfield through to Wood End Road. That would have got many users off the A644 Huddersfield Road, which, like the A638, is a strategic route. So I do agree that linking greenways is an asset, it's a key priority. So when are we going to see action on that in our communities?
Councillor Crook.
So thank you, Councillor Bolt. I do think connecting up the greenways is really important, but it isn't the only way that those active travel pathways can be useful and give good amenity value. So there's an initial idea that you have spokes into centres so that people can displace car journey and then start joining them up radially as well. So, you know, when the LSWIP's designs come out, you'll be able to peruse those, and I'm sure you'll have some questions on those. But I don't think that the greenway and the ringway are not useful simply because they don't have the missing link connecting them together. You and I had an enjoyable afternoon and into the evening walking along there, so I'm very familiar with how they connect up and the importance of connecting those two active travel pathways together. Rest assured, I'm not doing nothing about that, but it is quite complex because, as you said in your question, the short section is in private ownership, and there is a significant cost associated with any purchase of that land, and I don't think it's actually for sale either at the moment. So I don't know, but we are doing as much as we possibly can to ensure that in the longer term that connection can be made, and can be made in a way that doesn't only serve pedestrians, but also serves cyclists and other active travel users. So that's that part of the question. You also referenced the £1.5 million. I think, is that the small centres, small towns fund? So, yeah, so Home Firth was also a recipient of that, and as I understand it, that money is still safe and secure. I certainly hope so. That's what I've been told about the money for Home Firth. But, you know, it does take some time sometimes to work on which schemes should be delivered, and obviously that's got to be done in collaboration with all of the ward councillors, not just those who are specifically cyclists. But if that money could be used for that, it's certainly something that I would support, because I can see there's enormous value in that connection. So it isn't that Kirklees or that the transport team is not keen to do that, it's that there are external constraints making that very difficult. Welcome any support from you and from the community group that I came and met in trying to safeguard that route as well.
Councillor Kendrick, did you have a point to raise on this?
Just a short one, Madam Mayor. As Councillor Crook's already said, the 1.5 million is for town centre development of Hetman Wyke. That's what it's about. If you've got spare money in Murfield that you want to contribute to purchasing the ringway, we'll happily accept it. But we've got plans for the money. I absolutely support the group that want to see the ringway open, and I work with them all the time. But I'm not so foolish as to give up money that we desperately need for the town centre of Hetman Wyke. Thank you.
All right.
I was saying, because it was clear in the meeting of Cabinet that money was there and would support active travel schemes. Councillor Kendrick, I believe, was a Cabinet member at the time. And when Councillor Hall was telling us we could sleep soundly in a bed, she didn't dispute it then. And in the 4 years since, this is the first time I think I or anybody in Hetman Wyke have heard any suggestion that that Labour promise just before Steve Hall's election would not be honoured. And I think we've even had a councillor over there who was a councillor member for active travel. He did nothing about it. It's the first time we've heard this. So as a point of explanation, I know what the money was for and I know what it's not being used for.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay. Are there any other points on the minutes? No? Okay, thank you. Right, we'll move to item 9 then, which is written questions submitted. 30 minutes in total. So the written questions, the written schedule of submitted questions and responses have been circulated. So we'll now move to any supplementary questions that members may have. So question 1, Councillor Safdar, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I thank the Cabinet member for the response regarding my question on nitrous oxide abuse. Many campaigners, including the very hard-working personal friend of mine, Sharat Hussain of Bradford, who's a very hard-working youth worker, he's been featured in the national press and on television recently, talking about the dangers of nitrous oxide abuse and how there's been a number of accidents following this abuse. And the Cabinet member is correct that nitrous oxide is technically legal, but my suggestion is, and Sharat and many campaigners from various public health organisations and charities share these concerns, that could the Cabinet member and the Leader Council potentially write to regional and national authorities to bring some type of licence scheme in, because it's some people see this as a harmless drug, but it has led to deaths and serious injuries and families being torn apart. Now, on a community cleanup recently, myself and ward colleagues, we noticed quite a few small silver canisters. I'm sure many of us have seen these, as there was a large canisters dumped at various sites near play areas. So let's try to organise maybe some type of public information campaign to youth people in their teens and 20s about the dangers of nitrous oxide. My question is, will the Cabinet member and Leader of the Council think about some type of licensing suggestions and write to regional and national authorities to think about a serious national and local public information campaign? Thank you.
Councillor Amanda Pinnock to respond.
Councillor Safdar, thank you for the question. So nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas, as you pointed out, is the drug of choice, sadly, for a lot of young people, and it does lead to damage to the nervous system. And we've heard in the press about young people sadly dying from this. So I'd like to begin by thanking you for the question and raising this today. It is something that we need to be talking about, and certainly in arenas like this. It also falls to parents, so I just want to be very clear, it also falls to parents and carers to be extra vigilant about their young people, talk to their young people, be mindful of what young people are doing, but also about how drugs like this can lead to a lot more serious drugs that young people are taking. And there is specialist support out there for parents. So if you are concerned about your children, please do seek help. In terms of the police and local authority, as you know, the police are the ones that will go out there, will deal with it, make the arrests, so on and so forth. But also let's remember that young people are also victims as well. I'm very mindful of that too. But in terms of the local authority, we are doing a lot at the moment around drugs, crime, antisocial behaviour. So, for example, the Community Safety Partnership Board that I'm involved with, meeting regularly with the police, the fire service, public health and so on. These are the discussions that we have in those meetings, particularly in relation to statistics, early intervention, prevention, so on and so forth. And we do look at things not just locally, but regionally and nationally, because we can't look at these things in isolation. It's important that we look at it holistically in respect of what's going on. Your suggestion there about, you know, contacting bodies regionally and nationally, it is something that I'm happy to sort of look at. Obviously, I'd have to look more into what that would entail. But in terms of a campaign, I'm more than happy that, you know, we need to be possibly doing more in Kirklees to raise awareness about the danger of these particular drugs. So I'm happy to have those discussions with my colleagues about what we can do and also what else we can do around education. We're talking about young people, and the best places to go to speak to young people are places like schools and, you know, youth providers, youth centres and so on. So, you know, those are areas that we need to explore as well. So it isn't one approach in terms of, you know, contacting organisations, looking at campaigns. It's also reviewing what's going on at the moment in Kirklees. Okay.
Thank you. Question 2, Councillor Jo Lawson, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for the comprehensive update. While I fully appreciate the need for more social housing and the extremely large number of people on the Kirklees housing waiting list, I'm going to make a plea on behalf of my residents living on Walpole. Many feel that they are forgotten and ignored by Kirklees, that they don't matter, but they matter to me. Walpole Estate, bar one small shop and an infrequent bus service, has little else on the estate. Despite the many problems, there are many residents who take pride in where they live, who have come forward wanting to see a community centre on Walpole again, with ideas of what could be facilitated from a community centre, along with the CIC with funding and a track record of securing funding. Opening up even part of the old family centre on Walpole Road would mean there was a focal point again on the estate. And over time would be well used facility for all, allow youth work to return to the estate, drop-in sessions with housing officers and other Kirklees departments, coffee and chat sessions to help reduce social isolation, play and stay for babies, toddlers and preschool, with perhaps input from health visitors, a food share programme, education and training sessions, a community garden in the grounds, and so much more have been some of the ideas that have been mooted to me. Opening up part of the centre for a community hub would give the residents of Walpole so much and benefit the community long term. And I ask those making the decision around the long-term future to seriously consider the benefits that a community centre would bring to Walpole, show the residents that Kirklees really does care and that they matter. Thank you.
Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Joe, for the question, and I do recognise some of the potential uses for a community centre that you identify. I would say from the top that there are potentially alternative options for some of that provision. It doesn't all have to be in the same place, it doesn't all have to be in a community centre, some of it can be provided by other partners, but I do recognise the value of that community space and the sort of community cohesion that can be brought about by that. I would say that we also have a responsibility to those on waiting lists for housing in Kirklees. I mean, notwithstanding that Housing Solutions and Housing have done a fantastic job of reducing actual homelessness demand, and in particular the use of bed and breakfast, as I've brought to this chamber before, there is still an enormous waiting list of people who want to make that choice to have a sustainable and secure and safe home that's affordable, and so we do have a moral obligation to try and provide that. So property which is vested with homes and neighbourhoods has to go through a process of assessment, and I can't speak so much for what's happened in the past, but I'm really keen that Homes and Neighbourhoods does now review all possible property that could be brought back into use as housing, because that's clearly such an acute need and as a first priority option. If the viability for conversion or renovation for housing is not there, then we can explore other alternative uses for the building, either within the council or for community use if there's a group with a viable business plan who want to take that on. Failing that, then obviously there's disposal into the private sector, which isn't a waste of resource because then that money goes back into the HRA and we can use it to support further housing. Resource prioritisation relating to assessment of best use for buildings has been pressured because we've got such an acute need within the council, but we are building up capacity to do that now, in particular with respect to pieces of land rather than buildings, so that we can look at building council homes again as a council and scaling up that production. The old Walpole Family Centre that you're referring to is actually in the current 5-year capital plan, so it has already gone through an assessment process and there are some plans that have been drawn up. It was approved by Cabinet on the 2nd of December. The next stage is to review that design work, which is slightly historic, and just check that that work already undertaken is still valid, and then also to seek any further approvals that might be needed for the project. But if, assuming it passes through those hoops, then I think the service would look to group that together with some other similar projects and deliver housing as a first priority. If housing is not a priority, then obviously we're very happy to look at community use, and there may be other council or homes and neighbourhoods assets that also might be appropriate for a similar use. So happy to work with you on that, but I think that we do have to understand that the first priority for land which is within the housing revenue account has to be used for housing as a first priority when that's viable.
Thank you. Question 3, Councillor Taylor, supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Riley, for the response. I've reread my question, and perhaps it wasn't as clear. I was interested in knowing what the library service, as well as the education service, was going to be doing to support the year of reading. And I wonder, perhaps I'm looking at Amanda, to be honest, because I think library sits within her, whether she could perhaps take away that question around, in addition to what we'll do with schools, what else are we doing through the library service to try and promote the year of reading in 2026? So I think it's an important thing that we do that through that lens, not just through the education lens. Well, but thank you for your answer to the question, which I will take back to the young gentleman that contacted me about it in the first place, so thank you for that.
Councillor Riley, do you want to come back? Or are you wanting
to? Thank you, Madam Mayor, and for Councillor Taylor for bringing up this new initiative that's being taken place. And it's being funded by the government and it's being largely carried out by the Literacy Trust. So I'll just give a little bit of context as to why this is happening. So, this is the National Year of Reading 2026. Why is it taking place now? There is evidence from the Trust that reveals that only 1 in 3 children and young people aged 8 to 18 enjoyed reading in their free time. Also evidence from the International Reading Literacy Study. Only 29% of pupils aged 9 to 10 say that they very much like reading, significantly below the international average of 46%. Also, recent research from the Reading Agency shows a lack of reading amongst adults, and evidence suggests that this can affect cognitive development, language and critical skills, and it can contribute to growing social and economic inequalities. This campaign is aimed at everybody, and it's not just aimed at any particular cohort, and it's aimed to find a new audience, but particularly parents of children under 5, boys aged 10 to 16, families from disadvantaged communities. And the schools know all these things. The schools will be concentrating and are concentrating on these priorities at the moment. What we hope this new investment will allow is more opportunities and slightly different pathways. And the campaign is different as well. It's called a Go All In campaign. And the idea is that if you live for it, read it. So it's this idea that if it's something that you really like doing, then find out more about it. Read about it. So the context is different to just what schools are doing. So, for example, and this is adults and children we're talking about here. So, food, sport, gardening, music, gaming, dancing, dinosaurs, travel, sci-fi, politics. Any of those things, if you might be interested in that, then read more about it. So it is very much an initiative that's very broad, rather than just within schools. The barriers to reading, the largest barrier is time. That's what people say. That's the biggest one. There is a big list of them that I won't read out, but having more time to themselves is the biggest issue. So, what can we do? What can councillors do? What can the council do to support the campaign and to support schools? There is a website that is going live on the 18th of December, and the schools already know about it, and they will have access to all of those resources that are on that website. As councillors, as ward councillors, what we can do is get involved and try and get. So we're not just talking about libraries and schools, then we're talking about other community groups as well that might want to get involved. Things like the parish council, for example, or the Rotary Club. Any of these organisations might want to get involved and get on the website, find out about the webinars, broadcasts, events, resources, etc. There's also going to be a recruitment of volunteers. So within all the areas, then there's going to be a volunteer call out in January, and that will allow other people, other groups to get involved then.
And Councillor Riley as well, 5 minutes, so
Okay.
can you finish, please?
Yeah, I'll finish now. So,
you are at 5 minutes now.
if you would like to find out more, then you're very free to contact me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pinnock, did you want to just very quickly say the libraries are getting involved with this? Can you just address that point very quickly?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think it's self-explanatory, isn't it? The libraries are involved. Libraries are always involved in initiatives in relation to reading, children, adults and so on. So myself and Councillor Riley, I think, will be talking a lot more about this in the near future.
Thank you. Question 4 then, Councillor Taylor, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Graham, for your response. I did note that you didn't exactly answer the question which I asked, and that was what action we'd taken really as a result of the impact of the 2 recent budgets. I mean, the budgets are having a dreadful impact on the hospitality sector. And the hospitality sector, particularly in terms of the cultural heart, is a significant part of what we're looking to develop and build. And I mean, from what...
Is this not question 4?
Oh, I'm doing question 5. Oh, sorry, I've done the wrong... I'm asking the wrong... Sorry, I'm answering the wrong question.
Councillor Taylor, this is question
Shall I try again?
4. Yorkshire Water Planning Applications.
So,
there's a hint.
Okay. I'm with it now. You have. But it looks like I have as well. So, on this one, thank you for your answer. One of the concerns that's been raised with me repeatedly, and I'm sure there are other colleagues in the chamber that have similar worries, is the impact, the cumulative impact of the amount of housing development that's being proposed and the ability and the capacity of Yorkshire Water, particularly when we're looking at sewerage or foul water, for them to support the demand that's coming forward. I note in your response you mention about the planned programme of investment. You also may mention about the requirement on Yorkshire Water to make declarations where they do have capacity issues for foul water, and that there are some limited declarations that have been made across the district. Is it possible you can share with us, maybe not now, but get a response to me of where these declarations have been made in the rural areas of the district, so that I can share that with residents that are raising that concern with me?
Councillor Turner.
Yeah, happy to get that information, John. It's not something I have to hand. I think one of the problems we have here is that I suspect, or I'd be very surprised, if nobody in this chamber through their ward work has had a run-in with Yorkshire Water about slow to fix leaks, low water pressure, contamination of our watercourses through sewage leaks. The reality is that this, unfortunately, is a private company and is regulated by Ofwat. And it has seen fit over many, many years to rather pay its shareholders than take a long-term view of the needs of the country and invest in the infrastructure. And until they change that policy, or as they change in ownership, I suspect this is going to be a long-running battle with them to meet their legal requirements, for one thing, and to invest adequately to ensure that we can all enjoy clean water, clean rivers, and a healthy way of life.
Thank you. Right. Question 5, Councillor Joe Lawson. Do you have a supplementary for question 5, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank the Cabinet member for the update? And I did indeed attend last week's Cabinet meeting, but left with many unanswered questions, hence my raising of the issue of the Kirklees housing land on the corner of Springdale Avenue and Bewley Road in Thornton Lodge here at full council. I would, just as an aside, like to say I would love to see that land built on. Residents have informed me that work has indeed undertaken on that land, one telling me that they counted 15 workmen on the site to clear the fly tip that has been left to build up for months, no doubt years, all because this particular parcel of land is vested with Kirklees housing. And they are pleased that action is finally being taken and look forward to it being totally clear. What my residents and I now want is assurances that if fly tip again is found on the site, that there will be a similar time frame for removal. And just because it's chucked over the fence and not actually left on the pavement side of the fence, that it won't be there rotting again for months and years on end. And I don't think that's very much to ask for my residents.
Councillor Crook.
Well, thanks very much, Joe, for the question. I mean, you did raise it at Cabinet, so it was the same question. And actually, I'd escalated that to officers within the Cabinet meeting because it was the first time I'd heard about that fly tip. And within a week, the fly tip's been removed. I can't tell you how many workers were involved in removing it. I'm not operational in that sense. I wasn't part of the removal team. But in general, I would like us to concentrate on bringing forward any land vested with homes and neighbourhoods as soon as possible, either for the development of further housing or for disposal if it's not considered viable. So hopefully that site will see some progress in the not too distant future. I do also support prevention of fly tipping and enforcement against offenders and removal of dumped waste when it's needed. We recognise that, how upsetting this crime is and how it can erode residents' pride in place and how important that pride in place is in sustaining positive communities, which is why this administration has invested in teams that do respond across the borough with additional staff already in post. To reflect this priority and our understanding of how important this is to residents, we have invested in additional rangers in the GAT team who respond to fly tips with 3 additional roles. We've invested in enforcement officers with 2 additional roles, and there are a further 3 temporary staff currently working on removal of and response to fly tipping. So we have increased the team this year by 8 members. We will have a zero tolerance approach, and we do prosecute offenders, including by seizing and crushing offenders' vehicles. So enforcement is going to be tightened up. We are going to work against fly tipping. I would say it isn't, homes and neighbourhoods officers who have fly tipped on this land. It is quite often local people, so there does need to be an education piece as well in that to make people understand that this is our place, this is where we live, and that pride in place does need to be part of it. The HRA is legally ring-fenced from the general fund, so it is not possible for the GAT team to respond to homes and neighbourhoods fly tip in the way that you perhaps felt it should.
I wasn't asking that. Councillor Lawson, is this a point of personal explanation? Councillor Lawson. Councillor Lawson.
I think I felt that you'd indicated that it was council. Certainly in the cabinet meeting, you did say it's council property. Why are the council not responding? And I'm trying to explain the differentiation. What I would say is that the caretaking team from Homes and Neighbourhoods does routinely and regularly inspect Homes and Neighbourhoods property, and so when they become aware of fly tipping on Homes and Neighbourhoods property, that will be removed. Unfortunately, because of the positioning of this particular site, which was far away from other homes and neighbourhood property, it didn't get inspected for a while. So in that context, I'm very grateful that you did last week at Cabinet report to me that there was an issue ongoing there, and we did get that dealt with straight away. I have had an undertaking from officers that that this site will be inspected regularly now, and so any repeat of fly tipping will be removed. I mean, please do report any issues you become aware of, whether they're homes and neighbourhoods or general Kirklees land, and the appropriate department, once they're aware of it, will deal with it. And we did demonstrate that responsiveness and deal with it quickly in homes and neighbourhoods. Less than a week to remove it, Joe. I can't do better than that. That's as fast as
Okay, thank you. Question 6 then. Councillor Taylor, budgets.
Right. So, Yorkshire Water. Apologies. Thank you for your response, but I know you didn't actually answer my specific question, which was what action is being taken to review the viability of the Cultural Heart and the George Hotel business cases, because they're already have been produced. I noted at the end of your response you make a comment about that this is to unlock private sector growth. Well, sadly, we're not really seeing any private sector growth at all at the moment as a result of the last two budgets, and the impact on hospitality has been significant. And everyone you talk to that is within hospitality, particularly those smaller businesses, are worried about the impact, the cumulative impact of the increase in the minimum wage, because obviously a lot of hospitality workers are younger people quite often, you know, sort of part-time, etc. You've seen the increase in business rates with the reduction in the rate relief coming forward and the revaluations of them, the increase in employers' NI contributions. We've seen food inflation, which is ahead of general inflation. So all of these cumulative impacts are forcing businesses to make some very, very tough decisions. And my worry is when we get to the stage where we're ready to open a food court, for example, will there be small businesses ready to take on those opportunities within that food court? Because what we're seeing is small business cutting back in hours, closing. You're seeing them, whether it's a restaurant, a pub, a cafe, they're all really struggling. And my worry is that it doesn't look like we've gone back and looked again at the viability of this, and I don't know what our plan B is. Yes, we claim we want to have an operator that's going to take on the food court and operate the food court, but what if they're no longer willing to do that? Or what if the rent that they're willing to pay for that is less than we had in the business case? So it does need looking at, and from what I can see in your response, we haven't actually done anything. Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
On Yorkshire Water, thank you, John. No, it's a very serious question. It's a very important question. We're currently out to tender for the food court, so when we get those tenders back in, we will analyse those, and that will obviously go into the mix of the business case for those people who are tendering for it. We constantly monitor the business plan for the George Hotel. All our investments, we constantly monitor the business plan. The phase 5 of the cultural art, the venue, we got some consultants to do some work early in the year, which confirmed its viability, that is still viable, and we are waiting for the final detailed report, which is hopefully received before Christmas. So we do constantly monitor all our investments and make sure that we're still on the right track. Going back to the budget, and since the response went out, which was the weekend, I've been able to do a bit more work and a bit more digging around. So whilst I wouldn't accept that you would agree with anything within the contents of the budget, I'd be very surprised if you did, the actual fiscal policy that Rachel, the Chancellor, presented the other Wednesday is really very strong. We predicted to have the fastest growing economy of all the national European nations next year. That's not my figures, that's two independent international bodies that all said that we will have the fastest growing economy in Europe next year. Only to yesterday, the Bank of England predicted that the budget will reduce inflation by 5.5% over the coming year. The markets reacted very strongly to the budget on the Wednesday, because on Thursday morning, government borrowing went down. And as I've again checked this morning, gilts are still heading down, albeit slowly, but gilts are still edging down. So the money markets, the people who invest the money, they're really happy with the budget. From a fiscal point of view, I think it could have gone further with some of the things within the actual budget itself. But fiscally, it was a very good budget. So we predicted to grow the economy, and we predicted to get government save money by less borrowing costs. You're right, it is tough for retail. It's tough for retail across the entire country, whether that be hospitality, shops or whatever. There is a change in market though. We all know the impact that the internet's had on small retail units, and there's very little you can do to reverse that. And the problem with hospitality is, and it's a lot around pubs, is we have a generation now that don't drink or don't significantly drink. I spent my misspent youth in I'm not going to name it, a certain hostelry in Denbydale on a regular basis, like every weekend. Because there was nothing else to do very much in Denbydale at that point. So that's what we did. Generation Z, as they call them, or Z, whatever you want to call them, don't drink the same. So it's a declining market. And I did again a bit of research, and one of the countries that, because don't forget pubs are fairly unique to us, and Ireland, for instance, pubs are the cornerstone of communities, and they're closing at the rate of 130 a year. Ireland is really worried about their pubs, and it's this changing market, and the pubs and hospitality outlets that react to that and change their business model can be really successful. We have some absolutely fantastic pubs in Kirklees, some fantastic pubs here in Huddersfield, and some certainly at the Colne Valley, which I am occasionally known to frequent. So they've got to change with the change. with the change in demographics of how people want to spend their leisure time. And I think those that do it well can be still really successful. Yes, it is tough out there, and they've got my sympathy. But as I said, the next few years look really bright thanks to Rachel's budgets last week.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to the end of the 30 minutes for written questions then. Thank you. Okay, so we move then. Oops. We move then to just quickly to item 10, which is minutes of Cabinet and Cabinet local issues are here for noting. And at that point, we'll have a break. So if we break for 20 minutes, please. Thank you. Councillor Sokol, I believe you've got more apologies.
I missed those two. It's an apology from Councillor Well Simpson and Councillor Hannah McCarthy. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Thank you. Okay. Right then. So we've done item 10, which was minutes of cabinet. So we move to item 11. And this is holding executive to account. So in part A, we have 3 portfolio updates from Councillor Turner, Councillor Pinnock and Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, just on a point of order, Madam Mayor, under clause 13, paragraph 2, section 2 of the standing orders, it seems to me that for the Cabinet to take half an hour of what is an hour seems to be quite a long time. I wonder whether we could get by with 5-minute presentations instead of 10-minute presentations, in which case we've got 3/4 of an hour for questions rather than 3 members having half an hour of the time and then the rest, the 66 of us having the other half an hour. Madam Mayor, please.
Did the Cabinet, is that agreeable, or do I need to go to a vote?
No, we would prefer to be able to present our portfolio holders. Whether or not they take their full 10 minutes that they're entitled to, we haven't prepared it, so I don't know.
You want to extend the 60
So do you want to, no, I think that was a no. So do you want to extend the 60 minutes, Councillor Hall? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't want to extend the 60 minutes. I'd just like to reduce the time allotted to Cabinet members to 5 minutes each, please.
Right, so the proposal is for the 30 minutes that would be taken for the portfolio updates to be reduced to 15 minutes. That has been seconded by Councillor Marchington. So we will go to the vote on the proposal. We'll do that on the consoles, please. Okay, has everybody voted who wishes to vote? I think that proposal is carried. So each cabinet member, thank you members. Each cabinet member will have 5 minutes for the presentation and we will have 45 minutes for questions. Thank you. Right, so Councillor Turner, is it yourself first?
And the clock is ticking. Yeah, I'll try and get through this in 5 minutes. If you give me a nod at 1 minute, I'll sum up. So, Madam Mayor, thank you. I want to talk about our investment strategy and the potential for economic growth here in Kirklees. In the strategic context, Kirklees is in an ideal position for investment. Leveraging our position on our connectivity, we have the M62 corridor running through the very heart of Kirklees, giving access right across the north of England to Liverpool and Hull, and all the major economies in between. The Transpennine Rail Link, the single biggest rail project in the country, after the white elephant of HS2, is actually being built here in Huddersfield, on budget, on target. So our economic strategy 2025 to 2030 sets out ambitions for sustainable, inclusive growth, focusing on 3 pillars: our people, the skills development and employment opportunities, business, support for startups, growth sectors and innovation. Places, regeneration of our towns and infrastructure improvements. We have a very strong manufacturing base, boasting some of the most successful companies in their respective fields in the country and even worldwide. That's what we do. We make things, we make them well. Some major investment themes. Town centre regeneration, our Cultural Heart project to transform cultural facilities. The state-of-the-art food court due to open next year. A modern, purpose-built library, again due to open next year. Phase 2 will see a new museum art gallery with work starting in earnest next year. The demolition of the old piazza buildings planned for later next year, allowing the town park to start to take shape. Reopening of the historic George Hotel planned for 2028, working alongside our partners Radisson Red, which will finally address the issue of the shortfall of a quality town hotel in the town centre. Station to stadium enterprise corridor linking transport and leisure hubs. Cabinet only approved the other week to accept £2,023,576 of external funding from the Combined Authority to enter into grant funding agreements with the Council's delivery partners, the University of Huddersfield and its subsidiary company 3M Buckley Innovation Centre. We also saw last week planning approval for a state-of-the-art manufacturing and research facility just off Leeds Road by Paxman Scalp Cooling, a Huddersfield-based company, born in Huddersfield, who are world leaders in scalp cooling for cancer sufferers. A Kirklees-born company choosing to invest here in Kirklees. Dewsbury, £200 million regeneration pro under the Dewsbury Blueprint, includes the Dewsbury Arcade and Market refurbishment. The Dewsbury Arcade, the country's only cooperative shopping centre, has had its problems, but hopefully the years are now behind us and it will open as planned next year. Investment in Dewsbury Market, that will see a modern market delivered in the next few years. Dewsbury Riverside, the largest housing development in Kirklees, which is a challenging site, progressing well, working alongside our partners, Homes England. We hope to have a master developer signed up in the not too distant future, and that will see progress pick up. Station apartments nearing completion, which will bring an old building back into life by creating a series of modern living spaces for town centre living right opposite soon-to-be upgraded Dewsbury Station. Investment in a new, brighter public area around the town hall, which will allow pedestrian access from the town hall to the soon-open new library in the Walsh building. A new police headquarters, which will bring much-needed footfall into the town. The town board has submitted its plans to MHCLG, and we are optimistic that these will be approved early next year, opening a further £2 million of investment for the next 10 years. £2 million a year for the next 10 years, 20 million. Unlike most funding packages, the town board is allowed to spend 25% of the funding on revenue. This has allowed us to develop a series of programmes that will see increased events, etc., that will bring people back to the town centre. And working with the council enforcement teams and our partners in the police, we will see an increased presence in the town, ensuring that people are safe and also feel safe. Smaller towns, investment in Batley through the old Level 8 Fund is now finally progressing. There is money, as we've heard earlier, investment for Cleckheaton, Hetman White. And with the demolition, some of this has already been spent in Hetman White with the demolition of what was the old ISO, was the old market. Home Firth, despite some technical problems, is now progressing well and will enhance the offer of the town to shoppers and pedestrians with better roads and car parking. Cabinet have approved the Marsden local blueprint, which is being co-produced with the residents and ward councillors, along with the level of funding will bring new life into the village and create an atmosphere for future investment. So, what are the opportunities for investments? Health, innovation, digital tech clusters in Huddersfield, housing and mixed-use developments in Dewsbury and Marsden, culture and leisure regeneration in Huddersfield Town Centre, transport and green infrastructure projects supporting sustainable travel, and the S2S. An emerging much-needed local plan which will provide landing opportunities for investment in much-needed homes and industrial facilities. Now, I could have gone on, but I've been cut short. But so this is just a snapshot of the great things going on here in Kirklees and across the borough. This cabinet remains ambitious. I remain ambitious, and by working with our many partners, we are seeing investment continue to flow into Kirklees, not only from the public sector, but more just as important, the private sector. Madam Mayor, we are at the very heart of West Yorkshire. Our people have great skills and a strong work ethic, and an entrepreneurial spirit. It's not easy to say. We are innovative. We are world leaders in some sectors, but we just don't tell everyone as often as we should. We're a great place to live and invest in Kirklees. In the next 5 to 10 years, we are going places. So let's be positive and concentrate on the many great things going in and stop trying to put down this great borough and its residents. Madam Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Pinnock.
I'll try my best to do this within 5 minutes. So today I'll be talking about violence against women and girls and domestic abuse. Being in this council chamber and having discussions amongst councillors and senior council officers who play strategic roles in identifying, highlighting and finding suitable solutions is important to Kirklees. It also helps to remind women and young girls that help and support is available and they do not need to suffer in silence. Despite local, regional and national interventions, the scale of the problem remains stubbornly high for several reasons. Services are underfunded. Services are passionate, but they're struggling to stay afloat. Services led by and for black and minority women, disabled women, LGBTQ+ survivors are chronically underfunded despite being vital. There is also a lack of education, early intervention and programmes that target perpetrators to begin to tackle these issues. And also fear, embarrassment and the negative journeys that many women experience through the criminal justice system. Even if you haven't experienced it yourself, a lot of us have seen how it's played out in the media, is also very discouraging. Violence in the workplace, rape, violent assaults, honour killings, forced pregnancies, women's rights to choose are all stubbornly high and on the rise. A woman is killed by a man every 3 days in the UK. Violence against women and girls make up 20% of all recorded crime in England and Wales last year. In the year ending March 2023, police recorded 103,135 rapes and serious offences. In 2024, the report from the National Police Chief Council stated that violence against women is a national emergency in England and Wales. The report highlighted that 2 million women a year are estimated to be victims of violence. Most worryingly, the report indicates that these figures are an underestimation. Crimes involving stalking, harassment, sexual assault and domestic violence make up 1 in 10 for women in England and Wales, with the number of recorded offences growing by 37% in the last 5 years. Another startling fact is that perpetrators are getting younger. Young men are being radicalised online. Other data shows the fastest growing groups of domestic abuse offenders and victims of crime are aged between 16 to 19. And if some of you have seen that programme on TV, Netflix, Adolescence, a stark, dramatised account of misogyny involving a young boy, it was really scary to watch. So, what are we doing in Kirklees then? Moving on swiftly. So, as chair of the Community Safety Partnership Board and champion for Kirklees, tackling violence against women and girls is not just a priority on paper. I'm committed to taking action. Our Community Safety Partnership Board is buoyant and proactive. We consider key performance indicators and monitor domestic abuse and violence, and some councillors in this room actually sit on that board. This board is made up of senior police officers, fire service, public health, third sector leaders, community groups and other stakeholders, because we recognise we cannot do it on our own. We need a joined-up approach to tackle crime. We look at improving data sharing, effective local interventions and identifying where resources should be placed to get the best results. The Council focuses on monitoring community impact and tensions, and through weekly collaborations with the police and other council services and vital partners. We also pointing out the Partnership Intelligence Portal, PIP, is also a vital tool for sharing information. Many organisations use the PIP, and I would encourage councillors in this room to use it whenever possible. In December last year, the Council launched the KDAS, Kirklees Domestic Abuse Specialist Services, and you've heard me talk about that organisation before, so I'm not going to labour that. In July and August this year, the Council gave grant funding through our Community Plus funds of up to £300,000 for community grants for communities and voluntary organisations. This fund was used to support areas like domestic abuse, community cohesion and amplifying the voices of those who often are unrepresented and to promote inclusion. We're also involved in various national campaigns. Mayor's given me the nod. Those include Reclaim the Night, you may have seen a lot about that, and also the White Ribbon, the 16 Day of Action. Just to say that these initiatives encourage men as well to pledge to end violence against women and girls by challenging misogyny themselves and not excluding abusive behaviour and not staying silent when abuse is taking place. And I'm about to run out of time, but I'd just like to end by saying I'd like to really stress that, of course, there are a lot of challenges, but there's a lot of extensive work going on in Kirklees to tackle violence and to try to keep those figures down. We can all use our position and our influence as councillors to make a change, so let's do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just say that I've attended a couple of events in the Days of Violence Against Women campaign. Okay. Right, Councillor Hawkins, your mission, should you choose to accept it?
I like the way you open that, Mayor, please, yes. Good evening, members. I just want to thank Councillor Pinnock for a powerful portfolio update there as well. I will be as expeditious as possible, I promise. But as we do look to approach the festive period, I wanted to update the Council on preparations for our winter weather preparations, which are already well underway. The Snow Warden scheme is once again active, with both experienced and new wardens stepping forward. Kit collection took place last week, supported by officers from our Highways and Waste Services, and further deliveries are scheduled in the coming days. I'm pleased to report that the scheme has now grown to around 200 wardens across the district. These volunteers are not only gritting their own areas, but also ensuring safe access to vital community locations, such as nursing homes, doctors' surgeries, and local shops. We know from past winters, particularly those where severe snow and ice disrupted daily life, that early preparation and strong community involvement make all the difference. Lessons learned from those difficult periods have shaped our approach this year. We have strengthened coordination between council services, improved communication travels, and ensured that equipment and supplies were in place well before the first frost. Of course, extraordinary weather events are just that, extraordinary. We cannot predict exactly when or how they will strike, but we can be confident that here in Kirklees we are as ready as humanly possible. Our winter operations team stands prepared to grit hundreds of miles of roads across the district, keeping main transport routes open. And thanks to the dedication of our snow wardens, pedestrian access to key sites will be safeguarded too. This is a true partnership between the council and communities. It demonstrates resilience, neighbourliness, and our shared commitment to keeping Kirklees moving, whatever the weather may bring. I want to place on record my thanks to our officers and to every volunteer who has stepped forward. I think I've been swift enough to have the time to address Councillor Bolt's comment earlier around gritting of cycle lanes. Cycle lanes remain untreated, as they are in most local authorities across the country. I believe only Islington and Cambridge actually grit their cycleways. I don't know if you've been cycling down there recently, Martin. Local grit bins and community snow wardens are the main support for our to keep our cycleways usable. But when conditions are at their worst, anecdotally, even the hardiest cyclist I know has always tended to make other arrangements. And of course, the advice does tend, when it does get extreme, to only travel if you absolutely must. As I've said before, we can't foresee the kind of weather that we are going to experience in the coming months outside what the Met Office tells us. But again, both the councils and our communities are as ready as possible. I expect the public and all of us will use our best judgment to travel as safely as possible if we absolutely have to. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, you did it well within, absolutely, yes, thank you. Okay, so we move to item B on this item, and the 45 minutes for oral questions and comments to Cabinet members on their portfolios and the relevant Cabinet minutes. Councillor Cooper.
So, Councillor Patterson will recall that I came to the last Cabinet meeting to ask about the Solar for Schools programme. And the reason I raised it was because in West Yorkshire. There's 255 schools have benefited from this scheme across the country, a £100 million scheme. And 2 schools in Calderdale have received funding, 2 schools in Bradford, 2 schools in Leeds, and 2 schools in Wakefield, but 0 in Kirklees. So yet again, we've lost out on funding. And so the story was reported in the press, and a council spokesperson said, although we couldn't apply directly, we were able to submit sites for consideration by the scheme. So my question to Councillor Patterson is, that's what the council spokesperson said, so did you submit any sites for consideration?
Sorry, Councillor Cooper, can you just clarify which cabinet member you addressed that to? Councillor Patterson, to respond. Thank you.
I think, as you were told at the cabinet meeting last week, I mean, it wasn't for the council to select any sites. So I don't know where the quote that you've got has come from. It certainly doesn't sound like our press office would have said that. Certainly not without passing it past myself or one of the other cabinet members. I mean, it was not ours to source schools. It wasn't Wicker's role. It was the government. The DFE went straight to schools or asked schools to put themselves forward, and that was there was some criteria for that as well, I believe, which meant not necessarily every school could actually benefit from that, and nor but possibly would they want to. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Cooper.
Quoted it word for word. That's how it's been reported in the press. If you want to query that with me later and get back to me, that's fine. But the scheme was announced in March, and other councils have benefited from the scheme, but Kirklees has not. And the council spokesperson has said they were able to submit sites for consideration. So if the council spokesperson has actually said that, how come we didn't? How come you don't know about it? Is it yet again that the council's missed out on funding, missed out on benefits to people of Kirklees because your eye's not on the ball? Is that what's happened?
Councillor Patterson.
I will delegate this to Tyler, who gave you the answer at Cabinet last week.
Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Cooper. As in that exact quote as well, it's clearly stated it doesn't involve local councils applying for funding. It is quite clearly in the quote that it does not involve local councils applying for funding. Now, you're referring to council areas that have received funding, but as outlined fully in our press release and as explained at Cabinet previously as well, that requires schools, academies, NHS trusts it has been, who have been approached directly by the government to engage with them. It is very, very clear, and I don't think we could be any clearer. No, we have not missed out. It was not for the councils to apply for funding. It's as straightforward as that.
Councillor Richard Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I address a question to Councillor Turner, please? Would you be able to tell us what early warning systems does the council have in place to prevent land being undeveloped and incomplete, and specifically are Kirklees using these regulatory powers such as completion notices, and can you give us any information on when and how often these regulatory powers have been used? And finally, in a situation where a developer has a large outstanding debt to the council for an existing development, is this taken into account when evaluating other applications from the same developer? Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you for the question. Excuse me. I'll take the last one first. No. You cannot take into a builder's previous performance when they put a new planning application in. It's a separate application. You cannot take into account how they behaved, how well they built it, etc. There are currently change of the planning system being looked at, out for consultation, and planning regulation going through the House of Commons. And that is one of the things that we've asked for, that we can take that into account in the future. But as yet, we can't take that. I don't know the exact figures. If you want the exact figures of when we've done things around non-completion, I will find out and get back to you. If a developer starts a site and then through a poor business case or whatever, they run out of money, there's not a lot we can do to get them to build out. What is more concern to me, and there's always been a bee in my bonnet, is the fact that we've granted thousands and thousands of planning permissions across many years, and those sites are still sat there. The lack of development of approved sites is holding this little local authority back. It means we can't meet our housing targets, and it means we can't provide much needed homes for local residents.
Supplementary, Councillor Smith.
Sorry, yes, it's on now. Thank you. Just on your last point, so you've referenced the problems that we're having. What are you doing to address them?
Councillor Turner.
Currently no legislation that exists to force developers to develop a site. What they tend to do is they wait. Well, they'll do one or two things. Some will, or as we well know, will dig a hole, put a few bricks in, cover it up and say it's a starter site, and then the planning permission then runs forever. They can also wait for usually 3 years, reapply, given the fact it's already at permission, they will automatically more or less get that permission back. So there's nothing we can do on the current legislation that forces a developer to develop a site once planning permission being given. However, this is not just a problem for Kirklees, it's a national problem. And again, the government are looking at ways of how we may be able to force or push developers into developing sites when planning permission is granted. It is extremely complicated because if somebody says, I haven't got the money yet, how do you make them do it? If they say, oh, I haven't got the skills, I haven't got the staff, how do you do it? So it's going to be a really technical, difficult piece of legislation to drop, but I can assure you the government are looking at that, and it is part of current planning changes proposed to planning regulations.
Thank you. Councillor Anthony Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And my question is for Councillor Crook. So, Councillor Crook, first of all, I want to start by acknowledging and welcoming the recent report showing a reduction in families living in bed and breakfast accommodation to 42, I believe, as of September. That's most welcome news. However, while the emergency numbers are down, the wider picture remains quite alarming. The General Housing Register has surged by 22% this year to nearly 17,000 households, yet the supply of homes remains static at around 1,750 per year. So, beyond managing the acute crisis in B&Bs, what is the Council doing to address this structural deficit where demand is outpacing supply by such a significant margin? And to ensure transparency regarding where the pressure is greatest, will you commit to providing a written breakdown of the current housing demand by ward?
Councillor Crook.
Thank you very much for the question and the opportunity again to say how well the service has done in terms of reducing the reliance on bed and breakfast. It's a significantly better picture than you've identified. The latest figures show that in the last 12 months, the fantastic officers in Housing Solutions and in housing have reduced the number of families, including children, in bed and breakfast by 70%. That's a phenomenal achievement. I mean, nationally significant achievement, and I think we should collectively be proud and celebrate that achievement by those officers. In terms of the waiting list, it's a different department, so the waiting list is, it's the HRA that needs to try and provide housing for the waiting list. What we've been able to do is very successfully triage the waiting list to ensure that those with the greatest need do get the correct boost in their banding so that we are housing those with the greatest need. So if you look at a breakdown of the figures across Kirklees, you'll see that we've got quite a small number of A-banded, very acute need tenants, and we are getting them into housing at a significantly better rate than people further down the banding. I think that's a measure of the success of the team in being able to meet the most acute demand, albeit that our waiting list is now over 21,000. It's getting perilously close to our overall stock holding. I personally believe, I mean, some councils have done things to reduce their waiting list more actively than we do. I personally believe that people should be entitled to have an aspiration to live in a municipally owned home and to not have the, you know, the weight of concern for maintenance of their property and so forth. For some people that's tricky. And also to have an affordable rent, because people, even in full-time work on minimum wage, probably can't afford to live in the private rented sector or to buy a home. So I see that as a positive aspiration that people should be allowed to make. So I'm reluctant to shut the door to people joining our waiting list should they qualify to do so and wish to do so. Within that, there is also an assessment process that we should be undertaking, and we're not undertaking that quite as well as we should, because the resource availability to go back to people and say, are you sure you still want to be on the waiting list, and then remove them if they don't, or if they're not actively seeking housing, is probably somewhere we could improve, so we could reduce the numbers at the lower end of that scale. But actually, that's not changing the provision for those at the acute end of that waiting list, which we are doing very well at triaging and getting into homes. So it's a complex picture. In terms of getting a picture per ward, I'm not going to commit to do that. I don't actually think that's particularly useful. I think we've got collectively a demand for housing, and I would seek to meet that demand on a demand basis wherever it is in Kirklees. I don't like, particularly in the context of housing, to talk about north or south or rural or urban. I think it's really important that we understand there is need in all over Kirklees. There's need in my rural ward, and there's need in your ward, I'm sure, but actually knowing exactly the numbers that are on the waiting list in each area isn't necessarily the information that I'd want to concentrate resource on breaking down. So thanks for your question.
Supplementary.
Yes, please. Thank you for your answer, Councillor Crook. Very informative. Whilst I recognise what you say about the breakdown in the wards, transparency is essential to trust. And if the council is confident that resources are being allocated fairly, there should be no issue in ensuring us where the demand lies. So to be clear, does the council currently hold the data on housing demand broken down by ward? And if so, what is a valid reason for withholding that information from elected members and the public?
Councillor Crowe.
First bit, so transparency to ensure there's equity of provision. That the waiting list is not unique to an area, so anyone on the waiting list can bid for housing anywhere in Kirklees. So we're not saying that there's a constraint on people in your ward being able to access housing, or my ward, or whatever. I don't think it works like that at all. I'm not even aware if we keep that level of data. I mean, people's personal data about where they live wouldn't necessarily match where they want to live either. So I don't know how useful that would be if you know, I live in Homefirth and I'm very happy and proud to live in the place where I was born, but not everyone wants to live where they're currently living, particularly if they've got insecure housing arrangements, so they've had to move between private rented, probably had to move where they can afford rather than where they want to live. So what data are you hoping to capture, and what are you hoping to do with it is really the question. I mean, I'm perfectly happy to have a more detailed conversation with you about that and see if there's something useful that we can extract from the data we do hold to better serve our tenants and residents across the whole of Kirklees. But I don't think it's as simple as I understand your question to represent. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ashard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Pinnock, really well presented as always. I was dismayed to learn that as a nation, we do not collate data of sexual crimes committed against our women and girls when they are not known, the perpetrators are not known to the victim. It was quite shocking, really, because without data, you can't do anything. You can't have programs, and this is really important. What's our plans, and if there aren't any plans, can we put this on an agenda to ensure that this data is collated so we can then work forward from there? Thank you.
Councillor Pinnock.
I'm not familiar with those circumstances. Can you just explain again? Can you just say it again?
I was listening to LBC, and there was a specialist. Somebody's got to do it. There was a specialist on there, and when I heard this thereafter, I did some Google research. When the perpetrator is not known to the victim when it comes to sexual crimes, there is no data collated.
Councillor Pinnock.
At all. I think an assault is an assault and a sexual assault is a sexual assault. They're all recorded. as far as I understand it. The police have to record it, and the police have to investigate it. It doesn't matter whether they know the perpetrators or not. When the perpetrator is not known to the victim. But it shouldn't matter. An assault is an assault, and the police have to investigate whether it's known or not to the victim. So they have to record that information. I find that really surprising.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Arshad?
The information is recorded, but it's not separated. So when it's not separated, there's no action that can be taken thereafter. No preventative measures can be taken when this information is not readily available.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm not quite sure how important that information would be. I'll be honest with you, why it needs to be separated out. The role of the police really is to investigate who the perpetrator is, try to locate their whereabouts, and it shouldn't matter whether it's the person's known to the victim or not. It's quite an unusual set of circumstances. Let's have a conversation about this outside and see if I can get to the bottom of what you're referring to, because if it is significant, I need to understand it, and maybe it's something that the board need to understand as well and work through. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've one comment and a question. The comment is on Councillor Turner's portfolio. I think he's right to criticise developers who don't actually develop and are sitting on land. I think Councillor Smith's right to demand that we try and do all we can to tackle it. But it does ring a little bit hollow when the Cabinet member accuses developers of not developing when there is council-owned land in my ward, brownfield land for 200 houses which the Cabinet or a succession of Labour Cabinets have been sitting on for over 10 years. And this is why they've got to take their share of the blame why we're not getting houses through. These houses, we're badly in need of them. So that's one comment. My question actually is to Councillor Crook, and it's again about housing. It's something about which I feel very, very strongly. In the past, probably month, I've come across 2 cases of our council houses which are, to all intents and purposes, not fit for human habitation. Through damp, through rotted floors, this kind of thing. And it pains me to say so, but I feel embarrassed about it. And I think we should all feel embarrassed about it in this chamber, to be quite honest. That these people that pay us for somewhere decent to live, and according to the website here, they're paying between £75 and £160 a week, depending on when they live. So, £4,000 up to about £8,000 a year, these people are paying. And the very least we owe them is a house to live in, which they can actually live in, without it damaging their health. Now, I've had a couple in the months. It's certainly not the only instances. I know there are other people in this chamber where people have had complaints about council houses which are not fit. Now, obviously, there's always going to be residual work to be done on our housing stock. It's a big housing stock, I accept that. 20,000 houses or whatever it is, there's always going to be ongoing routine maintenance. But for the amount of money that these people are paying in rent each year, we should not be having instances where people are reporting health-threatening problems in their houses, such as damp and mould, and then having to wait literally months before this is corrected. And I really feel most strongly about this, that we've really got to get a grip on sorting the council houses out. I'm sure most of them are very pleasant, but we have some which are not habitable, in my opinion. And before we start building any more council houses anywhere, let's, for goodness sake, get the ones that we have in order and fit for human habitation.
Councillor Crook.
Yeah, thanks for your question, David. And I would very much appreciate it if there is any case, and I actually think we have a duty to report any case of DMC under AWAB's law, report that to me or to the service, and we will respond within the very strict time constraints that are stipulated in AWAB's law, which is now in force. And so I have sought reassurance from officers repeatedly. We have not broken that law, which means there is no one in a house with damp, mould and condensation that we know about that has been there for months, because that would be unlawful. So please
do what I think is a duty for every elected member when they become aware of any issue with damp, mould and condensation, and report it in, and we will respond within the Awaab's Law timeframes. I'm confident of that because we have consistently been able to maintain a position well below our business as usual situation for damp. Houses, when you have 21,599 or whatever we've got now, houses, some will develop faults, be it a leaking pipe, be it rising damp, be it a leaking roof. We need that reporting in so that we can get out to those houses and do those repairs. We've got an investment programme over the next 5 years of just under £400 million to make sure that our housing stock is absolutely fit for our tenants, and I am completely committed to that process. We are compliant in almost every area, and the only area where we have a deficit in our fire actions, we have robust mitigations in place to ensure that all of our tenants remain safe. Robust mitigations and assurance through external partners to reinforce that position, to make sure that we are confident that everyone is safe. We also have a stock condition survey now underway, which means that we will go 40% one year, 40% the next year, and then 20% on a rolling cycle, so that we will never have anything older than a 5-year stock condition position on any of our housing. We will pick up additional cases of condition that doesn't meet the standards that we would wish it to during that process, and we have the resource in place and the investment allocated to be able to make sure those homes are fit for our tenants. If there is any home not fit for our tenants, I want to know about it, and I will make sure it is dealt with. Obviously, we inherited a situation when the housing came back in from the Almo, which meant that there was unknown condition in some of our stock. There was a backlog of maintenance to be done. There was money in the bank for all the use. That is when you haven't done the maintenance you should have done with that money. But we are quickly rectifying that situation. There's been a fundamental redesign of that service. And it is, you know, I am immensely proud of the work that has been done by officers in that service to turn that housing organisation around and to be a landlord that is fit and justifies the trust that our tenants place in us when they live in our homes. That is separate to the work that's been done around homelessness, which, as everyone knows, because I keep repeating it in the chamber, is funded separately and not within the HRA. So I understand there are still some houses that don't meet those standards, and I am absolutely keen that we do what the regulator calls find our silent. Become aware of those houses as quickly as possible. Do the work that's needed to bring them up to standard. It is mandated. We do have to maintain our houses to that standard. The Decent Home Standards is in place. Decent Home Standards 2 will be coming, and that will implicate us in further improving the quality. But my view is we need to do more than the regulatory minimum. We need to make sure that our houses are comfortable, that they're warm, that they're secure, and I'm absolutely committed to that. So please, email me immediately and I will take that up straight away with housing officers and make sure that those cases, those 2 cases of damp that you've mentioned, are rectified. It's really frustrating. Sometimes people bring housing cases, particularly around damp, mould and condensation, here instead of emailing, and then don't do the follow-up email, and I still don't know where those cases are, because I really do want us to work together collectively to find them and deal with it. So thank you for raising those 2.
Supplementary, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Cook for his response. I'm sure that you do have the residents at heart. I'm sure the people that work for our authority have the residents at heart. But it is very, very wearing when, having reported a problem in, the resident having reported a problem in, I've reported it to the local housing officer, I've then reported it to the manager of the local housing office, and then I've escalated it to even further, that the response I get is, we're awaiting a quote. Right? In the meantime, this person is having to not live in the bedroom because it's too damp, and it's causing him to have breathing problems. Now, there's a difference between a response. You know, the council can respond within 6 days or whatever it's to do. That's fine. There's got to be an initial response. But my concern is what happens after that. Because, okay, we can go out and respond and say, yes, something will have to be done. It's the time that's been taken to actually do the thing to put it right that I'm really concerned about. So I do thank you for your assurances, but I think really we do have to look much more closely at these particular issues in a minority of houses, which are really, the people are suffering. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Crook.
I'll just take this opportunity to clarify that Awaab's Law dictates timeframes for us responding. We need to understand any vulnerabilities that tenants have and respond in an appropriate timeframe. We also have to complete the work within a timeframe, so that's within the regulations. And as I am certain that we have met our obligations with respect to Awaab's Law since and before it was
implemented. So I'm certain that we will do that, but please do bring those cases to me. I didn't answer your question about rents before. I think it's worth noting that our rents in Kirklees remain low relative to our regional neighbours and relative to the national average. So we are charging lower rents than others, and that has constrained the amount of money that we have available to invest in our stock. Nonetheless, we are investing the best part of £400 million in our current 5-year plan, specifically to make sure that we don't have these issues coming up and to make sure that our properties are fit for our tenants.
Councillor John Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. A comment and question for Councillor Turner, I believe, on this one. First of all, I share your assessment in your answer to Councillor Smith's question, and I share your frustrations about the national policies that mean that we have, I think it's north of 8,000 properties that have passed planning and are yet to be built. That's a huge problem in our housing situation, huge. So, yeah, I do share your frustrations in that. The question for you is how many developments have been in receipt of funds through WICA to assist the remediation of former industrial land in the borough? So we're talking about contaminated, that assistance. Thank you.
Councillor Turner.
Honestly, I don't know. I'll have to go back to planning and check on that and see what the figures are, and I'll get back to you.
Councillor Lawson.
Offhand, I think it's around 10 so far. I've always praised officers for getting those figures in and getting those applications in and bringing that money into Kirklees. What I would ask, though, is that I believe I've seen examples of developers in receipt of these funds that then go on to pay zero Section 106 contributions. Now, I know that those are negotiated, but as you know, they're important in offsetting the damage or impact to local communities in terms of education and highways and what have you. Do you think it's right or fair that they should be able to not pay those contributions?
Councillor Turner.
In the exact sites and circumstances, but it would, excuse me, it would seem a bit strange that they get money with one hand and then refuse to give it with the left hand. Having said that, having sat on planning for many, many years, along with yourself, I have seen significant numbers of what we call viability reports, and that's what the developers do. If you want me to do this, I can't do that. I can only do this if you don't charge me my Section 106. And I've always had a cynical view of the viability reports, because quite often you look at it and go, but they claim that they're done independently. So you can't question it. So it's not the developers, it's their independent providers who provide these viability reports. And I think we all know, as I said, those of us who've been in planning, how we treat those with a bit of a pinch of salt, but there's nothing we can do about it because it's an independent report that says if you want 20 affordable homes, you don't get as much Section 106 money through the other side. So it's a complicated process, but yes, it does seem rather strange. But I suspect there will be a viability report somewhere that says, oh, we can't afford to do that because we've spent all this money doing this. But you're right, it does seem immoral, but probably people are very good at manipulating the system sometimes.
Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just listening to Councillor Turner, it's sometimes said that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, I think tonight we've got an opportunity to do just that. The very last comments that he's making, when you can't challenge a viability report that's been written for the developer, I would remind colleagues of the work that our late colleague, Councillor Paul Kane, did as Chair of Planning and as a long-time member. And it was something in my ward. A developer in Murfield had come forward with an application and said, I've got a viability report. I can't afford to give you any 106 money. To his credit, and we had words about it at the time, which I later recanted from Paul, Paul said, we will decide whether you can pay or not. We're deferring this a month, we'll bring it back and we'll go into private session and look at the viability. A month later, the developer came back with £180,000 worth of contributions. So don't tell me that you can't challenge. It's the role of councillors to challenge and to make sure that the information they have is valid. Also, Madam Mayor, Councillor Turner said that we can't take previous compliance into account on planning decisions. What's the point of having a section on a planning report which says previous history and compliance if it's not relevant to the planning matter in hand? And again, I've seen this in Murfield, where the whole section was left out on a major development. And thanks to colleagues on planning, on both sides of the chamber, they insisted that officers brought back reports and they heard them. So we can take compliance because it's a material consideration. And the issue again on planning, dig a hole and put some bricks in. The approval of the condition of starting requires the local planning authority to sign it off, whether that's a delegated decision to officers, and if colleagues like me share concerns about the way developers are doing this, and I think it was Councillor Richard who said this, then the planning committee shouldn't delegate it. They should say, we'll bring this back and have it as a review and condition. So there are things on planning that we could and should do. Moving across to Councillor Hawkins. I don't need to go to Islington or anywhere else to look at how other authorities manage active travel infrastructure better than Kirklees. I can go to Leeds and Bradford because when they instigated the so-called superhighway, £29 million scheme, and they were opening it, we asked them that question. Myself and a colleague who was at that time a Labour member from Bradford, who's had the good sense to leave them now. The officers said that the sweeping of the superhighway was down to local authorities. Leeds and Bradford have now brought in sweeping mechanisms for the segregated cycle path, which is exactly the same as we have on the A638, and they've brought in a solution, and that's an actual word because they spray a saline solution on the cycle route because gritting is inefficient. So I don't need to travel to London. I can save my carbon footprint and go to Leeds and Bradford. I would also ask that the Cabinet members, when designs on road schemes are posted in the media, Yorkshire Live, Examiner and everywhere else, and we see diagrams for schemes that show active travel, and the public are consulted, is it right and appropriate to change those schemes by means of putting it in a traffic regulation order, which is a legal order buried, and not going back and publishing the designs and showing the community how you've changed it? I think that's a bit underhand, and it's legal, but is it moral? The point that's been raised, Councillor Cooper and others, this council should stop using anonymous spokespersons. When we were in Cabinet, I pay tribute to Robert Light. He said that as a Cabinet member, you are responsible for your portfolio and you will lead it, come good or bad. You will not put officers up to take the flak on your behalf. We should stop seeing anonymous spokespeople, and the Cabinet should step up to the plate and do what they're getting paid for.
Councillor Turner, on the planning, do you want to just clarify?
I'm not entirely sure what I'm supposed to be answering. But going back to planning, I can assure Councillor Bolt it is not a material planning consideration to take into the behaviour of a developer for previous developments. It is not a material planning consideration. That is why the government currently is looking at how that could be implemented into planning legislation. I'm not going to comment on something about a person who is not here to confirm or deny a conversation between himself and thing. May our ex-colleague rest in peace. Sorry? Well, I haven't got the minutes to hand, and I'm not going to comment on as a colleague who's not with us anymore. What was the other? There was that many, I don't know. Go on, Councillor Hawkins, you have a go.
Councillor Hawkins, very briefly on the superhighway.
I'll do my best. You might have to sweep the dust off my LinkedIn profile there, Martin. I haven't used that for quite some time. I assume this might have been an interaction which had happened this decade, possibly. But I think the priority for us is to keep Kirklees moving, and I'll certainly take away, go and have a look and see if there is any more we can do on our cycleways. But our absolute priority is when we get to see any kind of extreme weather, that our key road network is kept moving, that people who desperately need to travel can travel. That's the priority of Kirklees and our highways department, as it always should be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Munro.
This is a question for Councillor Crook. With regard to the General Housing Register and increase in residents registered for social housing, are you able, in Kirklees, are you able to provide me with a breakdown of the number of residents registered in each banding across Kirklees, please? And I have a supplementary, thanks.
Councillor Crook.
Yes, I can get those. If you drop me an email here.
Supplementary, Councillor Munro.
It would be helpful to know the actual number of housing units required. As the figure you mentioned earlier, the 17,000, the 21,000, it transpires is likely to be inflated. As you say, people may have found alternative accommodation or moved away. In addition, why couldn't residents register for social housing, those who stand a realistic chance of being offered a home, be factored into the actual number of units required? So you're not actually including everyone on the list. It's those who actually, who have a genuine need, who are higher up the list, rather than those who may, for whatever reason, may change their minds or be a very low priority. Thank you.
Councillor Crook. Councillor Crook.
Thank you for the question. So there's two parts to your question, isn't there? One is about the size of the waiting list and whether we could prioritise within that to understand how many houses we need. I wish we, if we get to a position of such luxury that we have sufficient housing to meet just the acute need, I'll be absolutely delighted. It will take a really long time to do that, so that's a problem that might materialise sometime in the future. I think that the reality is that the size of the waiting list, and that's households, not individuals, so when it's 21,000 households on the waiting list, you can imagine that there's probably 40,000 plus people on the waiting list. I suspect that belies a bigger demand, really. If people thought there was a realistic opportunity of getting a secure, decent, safe council home with lower than average, regionally average rent levels, and someone else taking responsibility for maintenance so they could concentrate on other areas of their life, I think we would have an even bigger demand for council housing. I mean, I've repeatedly brought the graph that shows the deficit in council house building here. So if we fill that green space on the top of the graph and get to the position on aggregate since 1980 odd of the number of houses we should have built, social houses, then fantastic. I mean, the government says they need to build 1.5 million. It's a significant number of homes. It's going to be a challenge. I don't think we need to worry about not building as many as we can for quite some time. Yeah. So in terms of that detail, I don't think that's a significant risk at the moment. Yeah. Sorry.
Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, we are nearing the end of the time allocated for this. We've had 3 cabinet members taking the space that we'd normally have 1.
I'm not quite clear. Are you extending the time?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
How long for?
Yeah, how long for? We've got 8 people on the list waiting for. Until the 8 have spoken, that is what is that seconded by anybody? Seconded, Councillor Thompson. We need to go to the vote then to extend the time so that the 8 people on the list currently can ask their questions. So can we go to the vote on the consoles, please? Voted who wishes to vote. That is carried then. So the list is closed. I will not accept any more names, but I will run down the 8 speakers who are currently on the list. So, Councillor Homewood.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, hang on a minute, Councillor Homewood. Sorry, Councillor Crook. She's gone. So, carry on, Councillor Homewood.
Thank you. It won't take long. It was just a quick comment on some of the points that were made about planning, just from my perspective as well, to add into that. I think what Councillor Bolt's talking about, I think has changed quite a bit recently. So I don't think he's been on planning committee for a while. I think he's right in the past that some of the viability stuff I remember from years ago was a little bit unclear about who was making the decisions and how members of that committee were being asked to almost do the assessment on that viability. Whereas now, what I see is very clear independent reviews on viability, which are brought to committee, and it's done very openly and clearly in terms of viability assessments. So I'm not sure it's quite as you were saying. And I certainly also see how active we are as a planning department in terms of having those negotiations on viability around making sure we get good contributions, for example, on affordable housing, and making sure we have the right stuff in the right places. And the second thing I wanted to say was, the point about the previous history of a planning site is because things like, a previous accepted or refused planning application could be an important, could be an important thing to consider. What we don't have in any reports is, X developer has so many compliance issues around the country or something like that. I mean, most of the time when we're planning an application, we don't necessarily know who a developer is. And looking back at the history of that, some previous compliance issues on a particular site might be from a totally different developer or different applicant at that time. So I think you're wrong in where you were going on that. I don't think you've got the right.
Councillor Bolt, you are on the list, so you can come back. I am perfectly capable.
I'm making comments on Councillor Turner's portfolio, and I would say, Martin, you're not the best person to critique on sticking to the agenda items.
Councillor Homewood, was those comments, or do you wish to have the cabinet member? Thank you. Councillor Sheard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Pinnock, thank you for the presentation, and I'll probably get your phones out because it'll probably be the only time that I'll probably say this, but I actually support the work that you guys are doing to curb violence against women and girls, and it is right in what you said, men and everyone should speak up against violence. Men were mentioned a lot in that presentation, and there is a but. I am concerned about how easily the discussion could shift and drift into framing men as the sole problem, rather than violent, aggressive individuals being the problem. So UK data shows that violence both affects men and women in many different ways. For example, like domestic abuse, 6.6% of women are victims of domestic abuse, while 3% of men experienced domestic abuse last year. But on the other hand, men make up around 60% of overall violent crime victims and over 70% of homicide victims in England and Wales. So, given that, could you please tell me on how we can frame violence and the work that the Council's doing as a societal issue caused by violent people, rather than implying that half the population is inherently dangerous? Because I don't believe for a single minute that anyone in here, any man in here, or any man that I know is capable of doing any harm to any woman, man, or anyone really. Thank you.
Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you so much for raising a really good point about men in particular. Unfortunately, the time was very limited, so I didn't get to do my full presentation because we voted for just 5 minutes. But in my presentation, I also talked about young people. It's not just about women, but also about young people. And I talked about the white ribbon, particularly 16 Day of Action, where we're specifically calling on our men to support what we're doing. The reason why I did the presentation on violence against women and girls is because that is a real initiative that we're working on right now in Kirklees. It's a regional issue, it's a national issue, It's something that the West Yorkshire Mayor in particular is championing. But on the Community Safety Partnership Board, that is a specific topic that we're looking at as a board, along with everything else, you know, serious violent crime, antisocial behaviour. That in itself is a specific topic. And the reason why it's a specific topic is you know, we've seen the numbers rise in particular in places like Kirklees. We want to get a handle on things and we want to narrow down the specific areas we want to work on. So I agree with you. Of course, there's violence against men as well. Men are not just perpetrators. We know statistics show that women also perpetrate violence. So I agree with what you're saying. But at the same time, we've got to go where the data takes us. And the data is saying that the level of violence in relation to women and girls is high, and we need to address that, particularly in wards like mine. You know, when we have our meetings with Safer Kirklees and we get those specific figures that are narrowed down to wards, we see some wards, it's higher in other wards, and, you know, it's something that we do need to tackle. You know, and when we talk about violence against women and girls, often there are wider issues involving children, families, housing, lots and lots of issues that also factor into that. So, as I said, this is what we're championing in Kirklees, and there is a reason behind it, because the statistics support that. Thank you.
Councillor Shear, do you have a supplementary? Okay, thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks for the presentation tonight. Really enjoyed it. It's a shame that it was cut short, but I hope you do bring it all back because it was really interesting. My question's actually to the Public Health Portfolio Holder, and that's Councillor Addy. Can the Cabinet Member confirm whether any former industrial and textile mills across the Huddersfield and Kirklees area have been tested in recent years for a legacy of contaminants such as asbestos, arsenic, lead, silica, cobalt, titanium and radioactive materials? And if so, what assessments have been made of the potential public health risk to nearby residents?
Councillor Addy.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. I actually think that's probably an environmental health question, but certainly I don't have those figures and details to hand because I was anticipating the question. And whether we do any kind of overarching survey of these things, it'd be interesting to find out. So can I get back to you with the response in writing?
Councillor Scott, do you have a supplementary? Yeah, okay.
Yes, thanks very much and well preempted, Councillor Addy, because yes, you can get back to me in writing. So given these well-documented industrial contamination risks in Huddersfield mills and buildings, if no up-to-date testing has been carried out for the asbestos, the arsenic, the lead, the silica, cobalt, titanium and cadmium, and also other hazardous materials, which public service do we go to? Is it environmental health, planning or building control, or is it currently the responsibility of anybody who undertakes the safety work? Because it's really important question I'm asking this, because we're looking across this chamber on developing mills for household and people to live in. So I think you need to be sure and go right back, because it's well documented in evidence that these mills are not safe, and any disturbance of any fabric is really dangerous.
Councillor Addy.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Scott. Obviously, all the appropriate tests are done when a plan comes forward, when planners work on a site, and we have structures in place to assure that they do that. Whether there's anything in place before that, obviously, is not a public health remit thing, so I don't know that. But again, you asked which portfolio, which service this sits under, and I think you probably find that some of it is overarching, and we need to work together on any specifics that come out of this and come out of when planners go forward and test on a site. You know, it could be a public health issue. It's obviously got some environmental health, it's planning and regulations, and we do work across the services. The services work very well together. So I can come back to you again, as you say, with some more detail and whether there is any overarching plan and pattern of what we've got down and available and that in a historic sense. But I can assure you that when plans do come forward for sites, they are very well investigated.
Councillor Darwin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My main question is to the Cabinet Member, but first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Pinnock for the splendid work that she's carrying out, and I totally support it. My question is, given that residents across Kirklees are reporting repeated failures to clear blocked drains and gullies, in some cases persisting for several months, even perhaps years, could the Cabinet Member explain why the administration is proposing a 4.99% increase in council tax when essential statutory maintenance such as drainage clearance is not being carried out? Furthermore, could the Cabinet Member set out what immediate steps will be taken to ensure that residents are not being asked to pay more for services that they can increasingly no longer see being delivered on the grounds? Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins.
I'll take the point on the gullies, and then I think Councillor Taylor, if you want to... Turner. So we all do this at some point, don't we? Wants to come in on the budget side, then that might be most helpful. On the gullies, I think I've spoken about this in answer to a written question at a previous meeting, how for the past number of years, we've been, certainly since COVID, there has been quite a backlog in the gullies and chasing the reports of the gullies and gullies needing clearing. And so what the Highways Authority has been doing is sort of being more reactive rather than proactive, which means that cyclical cleaning of gullies, which used to happen before, hasn't been happening. We've been pretty much chasing his tails since that point. As I say, over the past 6 months, there has been an improvement in how we approach that. Very much this week as well, I had a briefing on this exact matter to get us back to performing the cyclical maintenance that our residents expect. In terms of the sort of council tax increase and the budget matters, I will hand over to Councillor Turner, but when the budget meeting comes up, I'm looking forward to the amendment you propose that doesn't include that council tax.
Councillor Turner.
Madam Mayor, thank you. We're proposing to increase council tax by 4.99% because when the government starts to do its own budgets and looks at how much money it's got for local government, they decide that they will give us X number of pounds, and they calculate that that X number of pounds includes an automatic 4.99% increase, and that's across the country. So they calculate we need X, they say, right, you can have X, we increase council tax. We calculated that increase in there. So that's the reason it's expected from government that we increase council tax by 4.99%. You mustn't forget 3.99% of that, 1.99% of that is for adult social care, which continues to expand every year, continues to get much more expensive. And it's absolutely the right thing to do, to invest to ensure that we can look after our old people when they need our services. We are not immune from inflation. We are not immune from rising costs. Hence, we have to cover those costs off by increasing council tax. Inflation is about just over 3%, so therefore we have to increase our council tax to match those increases. And we see increasing demand in children's services in all of the services. So yes, we are going to propose to increase it, but it's to cover off the increasing costs and to cover off inflation.
Supplementary. Yeah.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. However, when drains remain blocked, gullies uncleared, bins are repeatedly missed, parents struggling, especially when walking their children to school due to excessive water on the road, and residents are now reporting a rise in rat infestations, this is no longer a mere inconvenience. It represents a failure of core statutory services that directly affects public health and increases the risks of flooding. So may I ask you directly, is this deterioration attributable to funding constraints, management failings, or the administration's own priorities? And how can you justify a 4.99% council tax rise when residents are being asked to pay more while witnessing declining street standards, escalating health concerns, and the basics simply not being delivered? Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins.
I think Councillor Turner has very much answered the point on the council tax size and sort of why that is included in the proposed budget for this year. Although, as I said, there is the opportunity, come the budget meeting in March, to put over counter proposals from across the chamber as well, which will all be considered in what I'm sure will be a very, very long meeting like last year. In terms of the gullies, though, again, back to it, I say that the challenge we've been facing has certainly been one that has been due to sort of workload, the amount of block gullies has been, and getting back towards that cyclical maintenance and routine. On the bin collections, we actually have one of the best performances across West Yorkshire on that front. That's not to downplay any residents who do experience miscollections. However, on both these matters, on the gullies and on the bin collections, Councillor Darwin, if you do have specific cases that you would like to bring to my attention where there have been long-running issues, please do that. I know you've done that in the past with certain issues with Yorkshire Water and the TRU and roadworks in your ward. Be more than happy again to support you on that front with gullies and bin collections. Thank you.
Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is actually for Councillor Hawkins, but just before I go on to that, it was my written question regarding the gullies last time, and I'm pleased to tell you they've been cleared. So, right, however, this question. Pavement parking is becoming increasingly dangerous in Home Valley North for vulnerable residents, including older people, those with mobility issues and families with prams who are being forced into the road because pavements are blocked by vehicles. Can you outline what steps are being taken to protect pedestrian safety in our rural communities, and whether Kirklees will adopt a tougher stance on pavement obstructions?
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bellamy, as well, for that question. Pavement parking in particular, I think this might have been a response to a question either from, in the past, from, I want to say, either Councillor Taylor or Councillor Armour. I can't quite remember at the moment. But pavement parking itself very much does fall within the remit of the police in terms of how that's enforced. It creates dangerous situations across the district, not just Home Valley North. I know certain situations in my ward as well, where that certainly, those obstructions do, as you say, force people into the road when they certainly shouldn't be, and puts them in very dangerous situations. I think in the response I gave previously, we are continuing to work alongside the police to try and improve that enforcement across the district, so that both Kirklees' parking enforcement team and the police are actually working to address the various parking issues we see across the district in its entirety. So I appreciate this very much. I'm saying it's very much within the remit of the police there. But again, specific cases and what's going on in Home Valley North, be it in Meltham or Honley, I'm more than happy to, or Brockles, I'm more than happy to look into with you as well.
Councillor Bellamy, supplementary.
Yes, please. On that, it's a local example I actually want to raise outside a care home. And it has a designated car park. But despite this, staff and visitors are frequently parking on the pavement and on the road outside, even though there's space in the car park. It's making it difficult for pedestrians to go down the pavement. It's also making it difficult for residents of that area to get in and out of the drive. So I was wondering what measures can be put in place to make sure, like this care home, uses its car park properly. Thank you.
Councillor Hawke.
No, thank you for that, Councillor Bellamy, and yes, very happy to support you with this. I think there certainly needs to be, from the sounds of it, some engagement with the care home to say, make sure that visitors are making use of the car park that they've got. But again, I think something that's previously been discussed, the partnership working with the police, making sure there's that deterrent there, as well as making sure people know the spaces that are available. So yes, I'll drop you a line shortly after this meeting, and we'll see if we can get together and try and do something on this as well. Thank you.
Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Comments, not questions. I won't be asking for supplementary, don't want a response. We had some interesting comments made about housing this evening, but unfortunately we heard yet again a tendency to blame what happened before and you know, on the Kirklees neighbourhood housing rather than accepting the problems that the council has done. This issue about what the council inherited. For all K&H's faults, it did its best, and there was a large number of us who put a lot of time into improving the situation. Since council housing been brought back under council control, tenant resident satisfaction ratings have plummeted. My last recollection is tenant satisfaction was in the 80s, the low 80s. As a K&H board, we didn't think that was good enough. We were looking for trouble. What about the 17% who didn't get a satisfactory service? That one, as I recall, the latest tenant satisfaction rate is about 50%. So there's something not gone right. If the intention of the council was to improve the delivery to tenants and residents, that hasn't gone right. I'm really pleased we're making, and as a member of the Homes and Neighbourhoods Improvement Board, I'm really pleased about the progress staff are making, particularly around damp, mould and condensation, and the procedures that are in place to do that. And I'm really pleased with what you said today, Moses, about the quick response to stuff people do need doing. But K&H employed an officer specifically to deal with that sort of issue, because I had a resident who fell either side. It had a new procedure to deal with damp, mould and condensation. It was a particular case from, I think, when Shabir Pandov was leader, about one of his residents who had a residents complaining about water coming into his property. They were continually being pushed back, and actually it took the council to intervene and say, come and look at what's happening. And they said, this isn't condensation in the property, this is not a tenant not heating the house properly, it's a fundamental problem with the structure of the building. And the K&H changed its procedures. The sad thing is a lot of that was lost, didn't transfer. And we've now got a really good procedure in place, but bringing it back into the council didn't improve things. I'm really pleased we've got a condition survey for all our properties, which should be guiding the council's investment in its housing stock for the future. But K&H had a stock condition type survey, so it might not be for each individual, but we looked at the types of properties. There was decisions to be made about the types of property that needed investing in. That was there. That information does not seem to have happened. One of the places we looked at was Sycamore Grange in my ward. There was a plan, you know, the council had a choice to make. Do we remediate it? Or do we actually do something else with it? It's taking years to do that. And that information seems to have been lost. So I am really pleased with the progress that's been made currently about by officers and those of us who are involved in homes. But I think we need to start moving forward from where we are now, not blaming things unnecessarily on what happened before, because bringing it back into the council did not make the progress any of us were promised or would have expected to do. And that's not a go at you, Moses, because you've been doing this. And, you know, I know I'm impressed with what you've said, impressed with the work you're doing, but we need to stop saying, it was K&H was creating problems and the council sorted it all out, because that did not happen.
Councillor Crook.
Thanks for you've illustrated a few issues. I don't think I said K&H created all of the problems, but I did say that we inherited a situation that did include some problems. And part of that is because the regulatory framework changed. So you talked about having an archetype survey. That's no longer an acceptable way to demonstrate decency across your stock. You do have to hold condition data for all of your property, not just on archetype basis. Of course, we look at archetypal basis for required maintenance, but when you inherit stock that hasn't kept up with that maintenance schedule and doesn't meet the new regulatory standards, you do have to go through a process of renewal. You've got to understand that we inherited a condition that meant that we had to self-refer to the regulator immediately. So we definitely inherited a situation that wasn't regulatory compliance, particularly around fire safety and around damp, mould and condensation. Subsequently found that we also weren't compliant on water safety. We are now fully compliant on water safety. We are fully compliant on damp, mould and condensation, and we have a plan in place and underway to become fully compliant with fire safety with full mitigations in place to ensure safety of tenants. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm saying when I became housing portfolio holder, there were a series of problems that had endured from the previous arrangement in the ALMO, including ones that the regulator felt were so serious that they put us on notice on 2 issues. So I'm not apportioning blame in a straightforward way, because it's not that simple, is it? Because the regulations changed, but we definitely inherited something that was not compliant with current regulations. So I wanted to make that point. The TSMs are not reporting customer satisfaction at points where I want it to be. That's absolutely the case. Obviously, the TSMs is a slightly different framework than was previously, and we've done a lot of work to make sure we're capturing more of tenant voice, so people feel more able to report in issues. That's absolutely a positive, and I want that to happen more. We have to get our house in order in terms of our technical compliance and exceed our technical compliance. We also have to work really closely with tenants through the tenant panel, which we do, to make sure that we listen to tenant voice about how they're experiencing our stock. So not only does our stock have to be technically compliant with the regulations, I want our customers to live in it in a way which makes them happy with living in it. So if you have, for example, full compliance on gas safety testing, how does a tenant experience that? I want tenants to be able to turn on their heating and know that that heating is efficient and effective at keeping their house warm. That's a slightly nuanced perception of how we're compliant, but I think that's a really important part of us becoming a landlord that our tenants are happy with. And I think that the work that's been done will translate into higher satisfaction ratings for our tenants over time. But it's not comparing apples with apples to look at the previous situation. I mean, you mentioned having an individual officer who worked on damp, mould and condensation or damp issues, whether they're caused by problems with the archetype. I won't say problems with the way tenants live in town. I don't think that's an acceptable way to address problems in social housing. If there's a problem with damp, and that problem is because the house is not warm enough, that's a problem that the landlord needs to resolve. That's not about the tenant. So we're really clear that the lessons that were learned through the tragic death of Ara Bishak are lived by this housing service now. We do not blame tenants in any way for the condition of the housing that we are providing for them. Their home should be sufficient for their needs. If you've got a situation with overcrowding, that's because the landlord is not able to provide you with a house that's big enough for the family that you've got in your house, not because your family is too big. We have to be absolutely clear about that. So a single officer to look at damp, mould and condensation would be nowhere near sufficient. We're investing over £2.5 million, I think, in damp, mould and condensation response this year. We're committed to spending £2 million for the next 3 years in our budget. That's because we recognise that we don't want this situation to reoccur where we had, something like 2,000 outstanding cases of damp, mould and condensation. That's totally unacceptable, and that is a situation that we inherited without apportioning blame. So we are doing better. There's been a full transformation, particularly in damp, mould and condensation, but across the whole service. Every aspect of the service has been renewed and brought into the modern context. So, times have changed, let's put it that way, and we need to comply with where we are now and the standards that we expect now and the standards that we want to provide for our tenants. So I hope that answers some of your questions it's not a blame issue. We all work together to try and achieve better standards. Yeah.
Supplementary, Councillor Marchant.
And I don't want to put, there's things that you inherited but had happened the time before. There were things that the council inherited from KNH that the council did not act on at that time, right? So that's what so I think it's fine for you to say, I have made progress on this as cabinet portfolio. I accept that and accept that progress has been made. But we need to stop saying, oh, we inherited this problem from KNH, and that is because there was a long period of time when action was not taken. There's a long period of time before KNH coming back into council control, before it self-referred itself to the was significant period of time. Didn't do that immediately. I think the word you had immediately. So that's the sort of thing we need to stop doing. So I am pleased with the progress we're making now. I do think we're heading in the right direction. But there were missed opportunities, and that's what we need to be careful about. Thank you.
Councillor Crook.
So I just want to clarify, I'm not saying I've made progress as cabinet portfolio holder. I've been, I'm very proud to have been a small part of the progress that the service has made. I think that's really important though, because there's one of me and there's, thousands of officers in Kirklees. It's the officers that do the work. We just help to set a direction. If we're all pushing in the same direction, we all want to achieve the same thing, then that co-supporting leads us to better things, and I think that's really clear. We did self-report pretty much immediately when KNH came back in. There was a short period of assessment, then we self-referred on one issue, and then we self-referred on another. I'm perfectly happy to get the exact dates for you, but it was pretty much immediate. We were aware as the transfer happened that there was a situation that needed referral to the regulator. So that just a point of factual clarification there.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is also for Councillor Crook. Sorry, Moses. I was pleased to hear when you were speaking earlier that you're keen to get any land that K&H owns built on, if we can build on it. I'm going to send you a couple of emails, but I'd ask you to look at a site in Grangemore. There's a former post office that's closed and some land adjacent to it that I've been trying to get progressed since 2021. And it's been with you know, Naz Parker, when Naz Parker was in charge. It's been flagged to Dave Brooks. There's a range of people that have been involved, but as yet, no progress has been made. They're talking about building possibly 4 or 5 units there. So it's a real good opportunity for us to get some social housing in place. And I can't seem to get beyond the initial discussions with them, and everybody thinks it's the right thing to do. So effectively, it's a void. It's a void that's been there since 2021. So I'll send you the emails. No need for a detailed response, Moses, but I just could do with your help in perhaps by raising it here, we might actually finally get somewhere with it. But thank you.
Councillor Crook.
Thanks, John. So, I mean, there's different bits of land and property vested with housing that we need to bring back online. You did mention voids, so I'll just address that first. We clearly have a headline KPI on voids, which is not where we want to be. I think part of that is that we need to, as other social landlords do, and particularly council landlords across the country, exclude properties that are not viable as housing, because that's obviously distorting the figures that we present. Actually, when we do remove some of those non-viable properties, our voids turnaround time is closer to industry standard, according to Housemark comparison. The other factor in that voids figure is, of course, housing that we're holding specifically for decants, which is part of a business model rather than a normal void, and also housing that we're holding for assessment for adaptation. So that's the bit on voids. The site that you're talking about, you said has an old post office on it, so it's not a clear site, so not a straightforward site to develop. There'd be some demolition first. I think that it's important that we use the resource we've already got, albeit that we're expanding the team and capacity to be able to bring forward house building, to look at the sites that are most viable so that we can get the greatest number of houses returned to provision of housing stock for our waiting list, against our waiting list as quickly as possible. That's probably going to be larger empty sites rather than sites with complexities like a building that needs demolishing first. But I think that we should be doing two things at once. We should be looking at the bigger sites that are viable for partnership development with other RPs or whoever it might be, but we should also be looking at those smaller sites, little plots of land, garage sites, things like that, and work out a way that we can also make those viable. But while we're building up capacity within the team, it is right that the team focuses where best benefit can be achieved. So that's probably why you're experiencing some delay. Very happy for you to email them to me, and I'll discuss them with officers. But I think the officers are well aware of all of the sites that we have and are looking at them, but looking at them in that kind of triaged or prioritised way initially. Yeah.
Councillor Taylor, have you got a supplementary?
No. No.
Sorry, it's me age, my hearing's going. Right, Councillor Bolt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to the Leader. The second cycling and walking investment strategy, which ended in March 2025, included an objective that 50% of all short journeys in towns and cities should be walked or cycled by 2030. Can the Leader provide the corridor count data on how Kirklees is measuring up to this ambition? And in particular, can we have corridor counts prior to the start of the work that we've heard about today on the A638, so that colleagues across the chamber can assess the viability? When we're looking at active travel and the Cabinet's partnership with Transpennine Route Upgrade, first and last mile and other things, will the Leader take back to their partners and come back with some solutions for the lamentable problem that I'm reading about in a national periodical, where British Transport Police refuse to investigate cycle theft at stations if the bike is left there more than 2 hours? There won't be many cycles left at railway stations for under 2 hours if you're commuting or anything. So it seems ridiculous that British Transport Police refuse to investigate theft of cycles if they're left there for more than 2 hours. and especially as we are seeking to encourage more cycling on the first and last mile. Turning to the presentation, Councillor Turner, you mentioned the George Hotel and the ambitions on that in your speech. As a council, we haven't seen the business plan yet, but I'm hoping that Cabinet members did. In that business plan, was there anything in the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats which gave any relevance to the threat of a new hotel being built in Huddersfield by a wealthy developer such as the stadium development? And if so, what is the implication on our investment in the George Hotel? You also mentioned the Dewsbury Riverside, so-called Dewsbury Riverside, which is lamentable because there is no plans for any new or improved infrastructure, including, as we've seen, the plans at the new Ravensthorpe railway station, where the parking is on a like-for-like basis to what was there before. Yet there are some 4,000 to 5,000 houses on this adjacent development. Do you expect everybody to walk there from that development, some of which is about 1.5 miles away? And to reduce vehicular traffic, including the peak time traffic impact in Murfield, why aren't new primary and secondary schools being built in the first tranche of building on the so-called Dewsbury Riverside, so that families moving in can begin to build a community and send their children to school in the locality where they can walk to, rather than having to drive into Murfield and cause congestion on our roads?
Councillor Pattison.
I think the first part of that questions, I note them. Thank you.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Turner, at all?
Yeah. Excuse me. The George. There is a business case. It's about 1,000 pages long if anyone wants to read it. It has been available for quite a few years now. The commercially sensitive parts are obviously not for public at this moment in time, but it's about 1,000 pages long. So yes, we have a robust business plan. When that was drawn up, you refer to Mr Nagel, who may wish to build a hotel or may not, down at the stadium. That wasn't around at that point, so no, it's not included in that business plan because it wasn't an issue at the time. There will be two different entities. The George, which is a town centre hotel operated by a multinational company, or will be, and it will attract a different audience to what's likely to be built down at the stadium. The George will attract events over its lifetime and as a soft spot in the heart of many, many Huddersfield residents. So yes, I am confident that once the George is open in 2 to 2.5 years' time, it will be a roaring success. We know from all our research that there's a huge demand for a town centre hotel. We only have one, and that's the Premier Inn, and even that gets full. And the prices they charge when there's an event in the area is extortionate, in my opinion. I know people who's had to pay £140 a night down there because there's a shortage. So we know we will attract an audience and attract residents to the George, as I say. Riverside, you're right, Riverside's taken a little bit of time. It is an extremely complicated piece of land to develop because we own part of it. There are several other landowners, and negotiating with several other landowners who, quite rightly, are looking to get the best deal they can through that site is proving challenging. As I said earlier, we should have a master developer on board in the not too distant future who will take over looking at the whole site because it is large and it needs someone with an overview to be able to negotiate the different parcels of land with different developers, because no one developer is capable of doing the 2,000 to 3,000 houses that the site will provide. But that work is ongoing. There's been many conversations with some of the organisations that are already there. And as you well know, if we get this across the line, it will be many years before there's enough demand to build new schools. You can't build a school to sit empty because nobody will want to operate it. It will be draining the public purse. So infrastructure, sadly, always follows behind because you've got to wait for bums on seats. You can't just build a school and expect that everybody who moves in has got 3 kids. So that doesn't work. So schools eventually will be built, I've no doubt, but at this moment in time they are not part of the master plan, because that is sometime in the future. And I hope that satisfies you. Unlikely.
Supplementary, Councillor Bolt.
Indeed, Madam Mayor.
And is it one supplementary?
It is one
Not a
supplementary.
Supplementary parts
It
3,
is.
4, 6 and 9.
It is one supplementary, Madam Mayor. The leader said she'd noted. I would remind colleagues, and again it's on the transcript, I did say, please can the leader provide data? That's a question, so noting is not a response. It may be a refusal because it's a short jump between note and no, but for the record, can the leader provide data? Yeah.
I take it is your supplementary.
No, it isn't, Madam Mayor. That was a comment about the leader's question. Councillor Turner, you said infrastructure always follows building. Again, you need to get out more, because if you go and look at our neighbours, they are far better at this. Wakefield produced the Wakefield Eastern Relief Road. And I think, again, our colleague Graham worked on that, so that roads were put in around Wakefield to stimulate growth. This has happened with the Hemsworth bypass. It's also happened in Leeds with Skelton Grange, just off the motorway, where the road spurs and infrastructure are put in before the development comes aboard. Because doing it after, obviously the land is taken up. What we're saying is there's plenty of opportunity. If you look at the school registers, the number of people in Murfield schools coming from outside areas such as Thornhill, Leeds, Ravensthorpe, Dewsbury is significant. So building a school in that area would certainly cater for those people and allow them to build a community. We'd like to see a more proactive approach and some solutions to the traffic problems in Murfield.
Councillor Turner, do you have an answer to the supplementary?
Oh, yes. We can build all the schools you want, unfortunately. Can I just finish? Be nice to finish. Be nice to finish this evening without his interjection, but we live in hope. You can build all the schools you want, but since somebody introduced freedom of choice, they're not necessarily going to go there. They're not necessarily going to go there, and that's the problem. School planning is really complicated these days because of this ability of parents to choose the school they want to send the kids in, and I know many schools where people send them 3.
No, Councillor Bolt. No, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Bolt, that wasn't a point of personal explanation. Councillor Turner, Councillor Turner.
It is in legislation that there's a freedom of choice of places in education. So long as you meet certain criteria and the school's ready to accept. My grandson goes to the school that is not in his catchment area because that's where his parents chose to send him, and the school are happy to have him because they've got falling numbers. So you can choose which school you want to go if the school wants to accept you. Infrastructure and it's all right saying put infrastructure in. What happens if you spend millions of pounds of taxpayers' money and then for whatever reason the development doesn't happen? You have to put the infrastructure in as you do the development. And at the Dewsbury Riverside, one of the problems has been gaining access to the site because there's a massive amount of money needs to be invested in the infrastructure to get on the site. So that's one of the problems we have down there. But when I talk about infrastructure, I don't just mean roads. I mean things like people complain about doctors, schools, dentists, all that sort of thing. They will only follow shops. I can tell you, I have very close relatives who work for major supermarkets, and they will tell you the amount of times that they've been burned. Because somebody says, I'm going to build 3,000 houses, and the supermarkets used to rush in, snap up land at a premium, and then find him 15 years later, we still only got 1,000 houses built, and they'd lost a fortune. So it always has to follow. Capital will only follow where there's a return on that. And they've learned the lesson of all these certainly big organisations, that you have to wait until there's something to open that people will use.
Thank you. Right, that brings that item to an end. Item 12, minutes of other committees. The minutes of meetings of committees as included in the council agenda as item 14 are here for information. Item 13, oral questions to committees, subcommittee panel chairs are matters within their terms of reference. Any member may ask a question of a chair or spokesperson followed by one supplementary. Are there any questions or comments to the chairs of committees or panels or nominated spokespersons? Councillor Darwin. Can you please say which spokesperson panel member you're addressing your query to, please?
I mean, my thing is to the chair of the district planning member. Clarify whether the current mechanism enabling ward councillors to request that planning applications be referred to committee is functioning as originally intended, and indicate what safeguards are in place to ensure that councillors are neither discouraged from or impeded in exercising that option.
Councillor Ulla.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Darwin. Darwin, apologies. Thank you. Thank you for your question. I understand. I think I know what this relates to on your previous submission. And there are several safeguards in place. And I think it's worth me giving a little bit of a background to what I'm seeing. So I think the easiest way, or the most simplest way for a planning application to get determined would be to submit it and for the officers to make a determination, for the agents and everybody else to try and work together collaboratively to come to some compromise. Failing that, applicants have a chance to withdraw the application, and failing that, you can still, if you're still not happy, you can ask for an inspectorate decision. What I'm seeing more and more, Madam Mayor, is applicants, and dare I say councillors that are in this chamber, that are presented with those options and that don't want to take any. They want to take it to the committee. So I'll give you an example. The last committee that came was an application. It's in the open, so we can talk about it. An application in Surrey Murfield. And Martin's been on about it all day, so we will highlight it. It was raised with me through Councillor Vivian Lees-Hamilton. It was referred. I felt that it would warrant a site visit and members of the committee would benefit. This was a recognised pizza chain. We went on the site visit. We were presented on a very busy main road by Martin, stopping the bus. We had a site visit. We came back and and it was absolutely determined by the committee. The officer's recommendation was to approve. We went into that committee, and I think by myself, everybody went against the officer's recommendation. So I think the process, there are safeguards in the process. And like I tell everybody, Madam Mayor, on planning, this isn't Lego City, where we can just build building blocks on top of building blocks. And when we finish playing with it, we can break it down. We're looking for good quality development, and we're looking for excellent execution. Thank you.
Councillor Darwin, do you have a supplementary?
And it's not about Legoland. In light of the recent appeal decision in which the planning inspector overturned the council's refusal and concluded that the proposal was not in conflict with local policy, could the chair explain how the service reflects upon such outcomes to prevent repeated errors that result in unnecessary costs to our residents? Furthermore, does the chair consider that clearer and more dependable referral routes for councillors might help avoid such situations in the future? Thank you.
Councillor Ulla, and please remember that you not to refer to a live application.
That application is gone. It's gone. It's gone. The inspectorate is independent, and that is due process. I don't know what more I can add to that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions at the item 13? No, thank you. So we move to the motions then. So, motion 18. Councillor Lawson. Council committee system motion.
Sorry, Mayor, I thought there was one before 18. Withdrawn. Well, with the time left, I think I'll withdraw ours as well then. Thank you, Mayor.
So, as we confirmed, if you've not withdrawn it before the meeting, you have to request it be withdrawn, and that would have to go to the vote.
Motion seconded. And
Motion seconded, and then it will go to the vote to withdraw it.
So, during the Mayor's briefing, I understood that there was another motion before ours that was being raised, which was the flag motion.
So at the beginning of the meeting, the Mayor confirmed that item 17 had been withdrawn.
No, 16.
16. 14, 15, 16, 17, 22, 23, 24, 25 were all withdrawn. The Mayor confirmed that at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, 10 minutes. 10-minute motion. Thank you, Mayor.
That's good for us.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep it brief so other people can speak. This is not a motion about why Kirklees should have or shouldn't have the committee system as a form of governance for us. This is about, do we believe that councils have the right to determine their own governance or not? That's the question that we're asking today. Former Ministry of State for Local Government, Jim McMahon, did not believe that. He did not believe that. He put plans in place to strip councils of that right. He believed that there should be a one-size-fits-all, removing any rights for councils to determine their own governance. There's a significant amount of councils that use the committee system and utilise the cross-party elements to strengthen decisions and strengthen and make more robust representation of residents of the boroughs. It's more transparent than the strong leader and cabinet model, both for councillors and for residents who, as we move towards regional devolution and democracy is lifted out of local government, our very local government, then we should be finding every way we can to reintroduce that democracy back into our hyper-local situations. So in the case of no overall control, for example, the committee system must remain an option. The last paragraph, the ask that we're asking for, I think it deserves a readout. I shall do so when I find the page. So that we ask the Council, instruct the Leader of the Council to write to the Minister of State for Local Government and Homelessness, Alison McGovern MP, to express concern about the Government's plans to standardise local government structures and express concern that local authorities have not been consulted. The Government should abandon its plans to reform, since the measures will undermine local empowerment and local decision-making. I recommend the motion to the Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Is that seconded?
It is. Who's going? Yeah, go. Sorry, Andrew. Yeah, no, I'll defer. That's fine.
Councillor Cooper, who got up first. Okay.
I thought this was good. So, does governance work in Kirklees?
So does governance actually work in Kirklees? We have 69 councillors in this council, I think 24 Labour members at the moment, a proportion, a quite small proportion of the vote share actually went to the Labour Party at the last election, yet they have 100% of the power in this chamber because of the cabinet system. Their legitimacy is very much under question. A committee system would involve all councillors in decision making. There would be no hiding behind that. And if we actually look at what happened at our budget meeting, And we were here till, what, some god-awful hour in the morning trying to get our budget sorted out. That illustrates the fact that particularly in a system like ours, it doesn't work. Not very far from here, a council does operate the committee system in Sheffield, and they finished their meeting at 9 o'clock, their budget meeting, because all the work on the budget proposals had been carried out beforehand by cross-party to go through the RAG rating of the budgets. And so when they actually got to the budget meeting, that committee system made a council like ours, where you have no overall control, made people work together constructively, and it changed the culture of the council. The culture of this council is very poor. Effectively, we don't work well together. It's quite antagonistic in the way we go about it. The committee system actually makes people work together in a constructive fashion. And if we're going to just throw that aside and say we're going to stick with it, just imagine what it might be like in a few months' time. Imagine a cabinet system operating in this council under changed political arrangements. Let's put it that way. It's actually quite scary, isn't it? I think. So, in some ways, think about what you wish for. Think, is the cabinet system actually going to provide the sort of politics that you want in Kirklees? Because you may live to regret it.
Comments then. So, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sorry we're having to debate this again. Councillor Lawson started his speech with, this is not about Kirklees. Councillor Cooper seconded it with, does governance work in Kirklees? So it's already got back to Kirklees. Council has made its opinion clear before on this issue, is we don't want a committee system. Councillor Cooper says, you know, it'll encourage people to work together. Well, looking at the record we've got of all these motions that are coming forward to Kirklees, that have nothing even to do with Kirklees, they're just national things that the members opposite like to talk about, presumably because they haven't anything else to do on a Wednesday night. Goodness knows how these committees are going to work. They'll be absolutely clogged up with all the stuff that's going to come up. Now, turning to the resolution, this council therefore resolves to instruct the leader of the council, you will do this, madam, that the government should abandon its plans for reform, since the measures... Have you any intention of doing that, leader? Good grief. You're weaker than I thought, madam. Just say no. It's ridiculous. We can't instruct the leader to do anything. We've got a motion here which instructs somebody to do something which won't result in anything, and I'm not sure that we'll get anywhere with it anyway. Just because some members opposite are aggrieved by the fact they haven't got their own way, they just make us have to talk about it almost. Once you've lost your argument, I suggest you go and find something else positive to start campaigning on instead of bemoaning your lot in public again. I'm very happy to oppose this, Madam Mayor, and in view of the time, I think probably we ought to move to the vote, and I'll propose we do.
I'll second that.
Okay, so there is a proposal to move to the vote and a second that. We will need to vote on that. The proposal is to move to the vote. Can we do that by consoles, please, as to whether to move to the vote? Thank you.
Hopefully.
Okay, all right. I think if everybody's voted that needs to vote, then that is carried. So the motion to move to the vote. However, Councillor Lawson gets a right of reply before we move to the vote. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I think there's been a basic misunderstanding from across the floor here about what this is about. This is not about the pros and cons of a committee system. They may not like the idea of a committee system because it's a lot of work and it's hard work and you have to work with each other. Now, if you're not good at that, then that's hard to do, isn't it? That's hard work. And I understand why people might shy away from that. No, this is about our rights as a council being taken away from us. We are in a national atmosphere where we have rights under threat, people wanting to take rights away from residents. As a council, we should resist central government attempts to take away our rights, to determine our destiny the way we want to determine it, and provide the governance that we feel best represents our residents. So I hope we can all vote for. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. So we will move to the vote then on motion at item 18. We'll do that by the consoles, please. Everybody voted who wishes to vote. That motion is therefore lost. Thank you. And that concludes the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.